Chapter 422. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Only then did she realize that the fluctuation was actually emitted from the Black Pyramid. A vast and warm power instantly spread towards Chu Luiyue's limbs and bones. Chu Luiyue was shocked. For some reason, the aura contained in this power was very familiar. Chu Luiyue held her breath and focused her mind. She realized that the seal was not broken. After that, she carefully sensed it and finally confirmed that this power did not come from the pyramid, but from the black seal that covered the pyramid. Chu Luiyue was stunned. She had only seen seals that were used to confine power, but she had never seen one that emitted power. Moreover, this power was pure and rich. It was almost rare in the world. Even if she had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian in her previous life, she might not be able to refine such pure and warm power. But now this power was gradually seeping into her body. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a while before she finally regained her senses. The seal on the pyramid was actually helping her to nourish her body and improve her cultivation. After thinking this through, even Chu Luiyue was filled with shock. What was going on? Didn't the first master forcibly leave this seal on the pyramid because he didn't want her to touch it? But now, what about the power that was overflowing from it? Suddenly, a figure flashed across her mind. It was the back of a man in a black brocade robe. Although it was blurry, it was still tall, slender, and straight. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She had seen this man's back before. It was clearly the man who had stood in the octagonal pavilion on the cliff, in the Imperial Mausoleum in the illusion. But this time he was not standing there. Instead, it seemed like he was standing beside a lake. The scene flashed so quickly that Chu Luiyue did not have time to see it clearly before it disappeared. Chu Luiyue seriously tried to recall it, but she was disappointed to find that she could not remember anything. However, that sense of familiarity was becoming stronger and stronger. Chu Luiyue opened his eyes, his heart beating wildly. She finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She stood up, walked to the window, and pushed it open in frustration. The night breeze blew, instantly waking her up. Now, she was more and more suspicious that it was not an illusion at all. Otherwise, she definitely wouldn't have such a subtle feeling. Could it be that the man in the black robe was the owner of the precious treasure pavilion? Chu Luiyue frowned. If that was the case, then why didn't she have any impression of this person? She tucked her hair behind her ears, and a trace of seriousness appeared between her brows. Something doesn't seem right. Whoosh! Suddenly, a strange voice came from afar. Chu Luiyue immediately looked up. In the darkness of the night, a black figure appeared in the courtyard. The moonlight elongated that person's shadow, but Chu Luiyue couldn't see that person's appearance under the heavy shadows. Then a terrifying aura enveloped the entire courtyard. Chu Luiyue was instantly on guard. Her muscles tensed up. This person was extremely dangerous. The surrounding space seemed to be frozen, and all sound was annihilated. The silence was chilling. Suddenly, that person stretched out his hand and beckoned with his index finger. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. It was a severely burned hand. Even though only half of the palm was exposed, Chu Luiyue could clearly see the shocking scars on it under the moonlight. In the next moment, that person's figure instantly rose into the air and flew into the distance. Did he want her to follow? Chu Luiyue's hand slowly clenched into a fist. She wasn't sure if this was some kind of invitation or provocation. But no matter what, that person clearly knew her identity. And he came with a purpose. Just as that person's figure was about to disappear, Chu Luiyue saw that person suddenly turn around. This time, that person stretched out his hand again and made a gesture. Chu Luiyue's eyes suddenly widened, because that gesture was a secret code that only the 13 Yu guards knew. Palace, Blessing Palace. This was Rong Jin's residence in the palace. After he turned 20, he moved to Crown Prince Mansion outside the palace and rarely came back here. Because of this, Blessing Palace was more deserted than other places, and not many people came here. But at this point, almost nobody knew that the deposed crown prince, Rong Jin, was locked up here. Situ Xingqian was also locked up here with him. It was already night time, and Blessing Palace was pitch black. It looked as deserted as usual. However, there were a few hidden auras in the dark, indicating that this place wasn't as peaceful as it looked on the surface. A figure quietly entered the hall. He entered the side hall, walked to the front of the bookshelf, and raised his hand to turn an inkstone on the shelf. Ka! The sound of gears moving could be heard. Under the bookshelf, the smooth and heavy jade board slowly moved aside. A narrow entrance appeared in front of them. With the moonlight, they could vaguely see that there was a staircase inside. That person walked down without hesitation. After his figure disappeared, the jade board closed again. The entire room was silent as if nothing had happened. Chu Liyue's heart was in turmoil. The 13 Yu guards were her personal guards, and she personally created them back then. Every single one of the 13 guards was personally selected and trained by her. Unlike Mu Qinghe, who controlled the military, the 13 Yu guards had no connections with any forces in the imperial court. They were more like her secret knife. Wherever she pointed, they would cut through all the thorns for her. The most important thing was that she was their only direct master. At any time, at any place, under any circumstances, they would only listen to her orders. Even her father had no right to interfere. When she was in a desperate situation back then, the 13 Yu guards weren't by her side. All the signals she sent for help were also ignored. Until her death, she didn't see any of them again. After meeting Mu Qinghe, she had a guess in her heart. Did the 13 Yu guards betray her back then? She didn't dare to think about it. Every time she thought of this, she would automatically skip it, as if she was actively avoiding something. Therefore, only God knew how shocked she was when she saw that familiar hand gesture. Chu Liyue's entire body seemed to be frozen. All the blood in her body stopped flowing, and only her heart was beating wildly. Thump, 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 thump. Countless guesses flashed through her mind at lightning speed. You! However, just as she opened her mouth and was about to ask the person, that person suddenly turned and left. Chu Liyue gritted her teeth and jumped out of the window. She followed that person. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 423. Creak. The sound of the door opening was heard in the dark and cramped space. Situ Xingqian, who was trapped in the metal cage, suddenly looked up. Her exquisite hair bun was already untied, and a few strands of hair hung down messily. She looked very down and out. The dirty marks on her face and body made her look even more disheveled. I've lived for so many years, but I've never been in such a situation. The footsteps gradually got closer. A man walked in and stood 3 steps away from the metal cage. In the entire space, only the 2 candles on the mottled walls were shining weakly. Situ Xingqian couldn't see the person's face clearly, but she immediately recognized him when she saw his figure. It's Emperor Jiawen. She almost immediately stood up, rushed over, grabbed the metal bars and harshly shook them. Let me out! Let me out! My father is already here, right? Emperor Jiawen took a step back and reached out to fan his nose. Situ Xingqian was instantly embarrassed, and her face was burning. She involuntarily let go of her hands and wanted to crawl into the ground. After being locked in here, she had to settle all her daily needs in this small space, and she couldn't even leave the cage. One could imagine what kind of person she was now. Situ Xingqian didn't know how long she had been locked in here, because every day felt like a year. Every second she spent here made her feel like she was one step closer to breaking down. Ever since she was born, she was country Xing Luo's honorable eldest princess. When had she ever experienced such torture? She had already cursed Emperor Jiawen countless times in her heart. If she had the chance, she would definitely cut him into pieces. But at this point, she was still on the other party's chopping board. So she naturally didn't dare to be too presumptuous. Emperor Jiawen sneered. He's here, but he should be on his way back now, right? Situ Xingqian's expression instantly froze. It was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her head, extinguishing all her hopes and desires. Impossible. My father definitely won't leave me alone. You're lying to me. Situ Xingqian screamed in disbelief. Father has always doted on me the most. How can he leave just like that? Don't worry. He's only going back to prepare for your wedding with Rongjin. You're his most beloved daughter, so of course he wouldn't abandon you. "Oh right, the date is set to be half a month later," said Emperor Jiawen slowly. "After the Empress funeral, we will hold your wedding." Originally, it was set to be a month later, but your imperial father seemed to be in a hurry, so he brought it forward by half a month. Situ Xingqian was completely stunned. What? My wedding with Rongjin? She had already told her father that Rongjin was a fake heaven's chosen son. On the one hand, father came to cancel her marriage agreement with Rongjin, and on the other hand, he wanted to take her away from here. But now what was going on? Time was tight, so it was inevitable that some things were overlooked. But thankfully, Rongjin was no longer the crown prince. So many complicated and long formalities could be skipped. Emperor Jiawen sounded relaxed as if he were really happy for them. Situ Xingqian was so angry that her entire body trembled. He did it on purpose. Emperor Jiawen clearly did it on purpose. He wanted to use this opportunity to thoroughly humiliate them. You. At this stage, Situ Xingqian finally tore off her last layer of disguise. Her sharp voice reverberated in the dark space, and it sounded more like a female ghost's shrill scream. She stared at Emperor Jiawen with all her might, wanting to find some clues from his blurry face. But nothing. Emperor Jiawen didn't look like he was lying. Situ Xingqian's heart finally sank. She knew that Emperor Jiawen was forcing her. The moonlight was bright, and the night breeze was gentle. The imperial city at night seemed to have fallen into a deep slumber as it was silent. Chu Luiyue followed that mysterious person all the way. Very quickly, she discovered that the person was heading in the direction of the palace. Her heart skipped a beat, and she instantly hesitated. It wasn't that she hadn't been to the palace before, so she clearly knew that the entire palace was actually a gigantic Xian formation. Outside the imperial palace, there was an invisible barrier. With her current strength, it would be too difficult for her to sneak in without anyone noticing. But the person in front didn't seem to care about all this. As he continued to move forward quickly, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath in and still followed him. No matter what, I must get to the bottom of this matter today. After around 15 minutes, the two of them finally arrived outside the palace's walls. This place was rather secluded, and other than the patrolling imperial guards, there weren't many people guarding it. But Chu Luiyue could clearly feel the barrier's suppression when she stood below the wall. She looked up at that mysterious person. That person stretched out his hand, and a ray of starlight flashed across his fingertips. A neat cut instantly appeared on the barrier. Also, it didn't cause any commotion. Chu Luiyue's eyelids harshly twitched. This move, I've seen it before. It had helped me a lot before. But I didn't expect that today, Shua. The barrier opened, and that person had already jumped over the wall. He had entered the palace. Chu Luiyue could only see the corner of a black shirt flashing across the wall. She took a few steps back and quickly rushed forward. She stepped on the wall. Then her body was parallel to the ground, and she directly rushed up the wall. She easily flipped her body, bent her legs slightly, and landed on the ground. She looked up and saw that the person had continued to move forward. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. This person wasn't worried that she wouldn't be able to keep up. But she didn't have time to think too much, and quickly chased after him. The two of them were like night cats, completely hidden in the thick darkness of the night. But soon, Chu Luiyue was shocked to find that this person seemed to be very familiar with the layout of the palace. Under that person's lead, they easily avoided all the patrolling and guarding palace guards. They drove straight in. Chu Luiyue was even more puzzled. Why was this person so familiar with the palace? As if he had been here countless times. Especially towards the end, they went further and further away. But that person's speed was consistent from beginning to end. Every step he took was without any hesitation. After about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, that person finally stopped. Chu Luiyue stood still, hiding in the shadows, and looked forward. When she saw the words Blessing Palace on the signboard, her brows furrowed slightly. Why did he come to this place? It didn't seem like suddenly. Chu Luiyue's gaze focused. No. There were a few obscure auras around the Blessing Palace. There was someone inside. Just as she was thinking about who would be here at this time of the night, that mysterious person suddenly walked forward. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 424. Chu Luiyue originally thought that the person was going to directly go over, but he saw something fall from the person's hands when he walked over the next moment. Under the illumination of the moonlight, that thing reflected a faint light. A faint fragrance wafted out. Chu Luiyue was stunned. This is phosphor powder. Just a little bit of it can ignite a sea of fire. This person, is he planning to burn Blessing Palace down? But this is only the periphery of Blessing Palace. Even if he sprinkles the phosphor powder here, it won't immediately burn inside. What is he doing this for? Suddenly, Blessing Palace's side door opened. Chu Luiyue immediately looked up. A figure walked out from it. Chu Luiyue focused his gaze. It's indeed Emperor Jiawen. After thinking about it, he's the only person who can mobilize such a large force in the palace. As the distance was quite far, and the person's face was mostly hidden in the darkness, Chu Luiyue couldn't clearly see his current expression. Emperor Jiawen raised his hand and pointed. He then turned around to take a look before leaving. Along with his figure, two of the few obscure auras disappeared as well. It was obvious that the remaining people were still in charge of guarding this place. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes. There aren't many people who can make Emperor Jiawen spend so much effort and carefully trap them in the palace. He thought of Situ Yan's ugly expression when he saw him previously. The person who's locked here should be Situ Xingqian. Emperor Jiawen clearly wants to get something out of her. But judging from his previous appearance, there shouldn't be any progress. Chu Luiyue looked at the mysterious person in front of him. He must know that Situ Xingqian is trapped here, so he purposely lured her here. But why is he doing this? Without waiting for Chu Luiyue to ask, that person silently walked in another direction. His footsteps seemed slow, but they were actually very fast. He also perfectly hit his tracks. If Chu Luiyue hadn't been staring at him, he probably wouldn't have been able to recognize his movements. For some reason, she seemed to be able to guess that person's thoughts. So when he gradually approached the Blessing Palace, she obediently stayed where she was. With her current realm, she would only become a target if she went out. Moreover, it would definitely attract the attention of those experts in the dark. Therefore, she might as well not do anything and just wait and see what would happen. Soon, that person's figure disappeared behind a pillar at the very edge of the Blessing and Peace Palace. Chu Luiyue held his breath. Suddenly, a powerful pressure came down from the sky at high speed. She immediately looked up. He saw a gray-robed man walking in the air. He was wearing a curtain hat that covered his face, so his appearance could not be seen. However, judging from his slightly hunched shoulders, he seemed to be quite old. The moment he appeared, three figures instantly appeared around the Blessing Palace. The gray-robed old man was surrounded in the middle. Who are you? How dare you barge into Yao Chen's palace? Chu Luiyue squinted her eyes. The three of them were clearly sent by Emperor Jiawen to guard this place. Also, the three of them were all Stage 5 warriors. There were only a handful of Stage 5 warriors in the entire country Yao Chen. Yet Emperor Jiawen actually left three of them here. This showed how strict he was with Situ Xingqian. This lineup was enough to stop most people from barging in. However, that gray-robed old man was an entire stage higher than them. The higher the stage, the greater the difference between the two parties. Even if the three of them worked together, they might not be this old man's match. This old man came here today only to take someone away. As long as you know what's good for you, I won't make things difficult for you, said the gray-robed old man calmly. His voice was low and hoarse, and his tone was calm. However, it had a high and mighty aura, as if it was an order. He's clearly the one who came to snatch Situ Xingqian. Yet he said that he wouldn't make things difficult for the other party. How arrogant. Chu Luiyue thought quickly. This person clearly came for Situ Xingqian. But as for his identity, it's hard to guess. How dare you? Where do you think this is? Do you think you can come and go as you please? The three of them were clearly enraged by the old man's words. They looked at each other and rushed forward together. I'll teach you a lesson today. Faced with the three people's attacks, the gray-robed old man didn't seem to care at all. He laughed softly and didn't hide his disdain at all. With just the three of you? Seeing that the three of them were getting closer and closer to him, he didn't move at all. Kill! The three forces instantly flew out at the same time. Seeing that he was about to be hit, the old man finally raised his hand. His palm was exceptionally wide, and it was like a fan as it silently landed. A gigantic silver palm print appeared above him. Mountain River Seal! Hollered the old man. The silver palm print instantly pressed down. In the next moment, the three origin powers actually collapsed and completely dissipated. The violent force spread in all directions. However, at this moment, the old man's palm curled up slightly, and all of the crazy energy turbulence was silently contained. Everything happened silently, but it immediately caused the three people's expressions to change. A stage 6 warrior was actually so powerful? Go! The gray-robed old man gently waved his palm. A terrifying force crazily gushed out from his palm. The gigantic palm print gradually dissipated, and finally, the star turned into a silver ring that kept expanding. Quickly retreat! The three of them felt that something was wrong, and immediately wanted to escape. But it was too late. The powerful pressure contained within the silver ring almost made them unable to breathe. All of them were frozen on the spot. No matter how hard they struggled, they were unable to take even half a step away. They could only allow the silver ring to crush their bodies. Puff! One of them couldn't take it and spat out a mouthful of blood. The other two weren't any better. Their faces were pale, and they couldn't say a word. Overestimating yourself. The gray-robed old man sneered and moved his palm slightly. You don't. Before the person who struggled to open his mouth could finish his words, a strange light flashed across the silver ring and passed through his chest. Following a muffled sound, his body flew out and fell heavily on the ground. Chu Luiyue became even more cautious and controlled her aura. At the same time, many guesses flashed through her mind. To dare to come here with such fanfare, it was enough to show how arrogant this person was. 1 against 3, and he was actually so relaxed. The gray-robed old man obviously didn't put those people in his eyes. After dealing with them, he went straight for the entrance of the Blessing Palace. However, just as he was about to approach, a gigantic Xian formation suddenly appeared above the Blessing Palace and completely enveloped it. The gray-robed old man finally stopped, because this Xian formation was actually quite troublesome. But Chu Luiyue, who was hiding in the dark, suddenly had her eyes lit up. She could use that Xian formation to enter the Blessing Palace. Digression: Kawenka is about to faint. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 425. The gigantic Xian formation shone brightly, and the entire Blessing Palace was shrouded in the dazzling light. Under such circumstances, I'll definitely be discovered if I go over directly. But if I merge into the Xian formation, I can conceal myself. Chu Luiyue stared at the Xian formation carefully as her fingers slid in midair, outlining the rough outline. She had never seen this Xian formation before, and this Xian formation's level wasn't low. Thus, she couldn't replicate its original appearance in such a short time. However, she could easily take it apart. A sharp whistle suddenly came from midair. Bang! A firework suddenly bloomed in the dark night sky. This is a warning signal. This commotion will definitely attract everyone's attention in the palace. The elder in gray was thinking about how to break the Xian formation when he heard this sound. He immediately turned around. When he realized that the three of them had sent out a request for help, he couldn't help but snort. Huh. It seems like you're really not afraid of blowing this matter up. The man who was previously thrown onto the ground crawled up with difficulty and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was also holding a tube in his hand. He was clearly the one who lit the firework just now. When the other two saw this, they looked at each other and saw deep worry in each other's eyes. They rushed to that person's side and anxiously said, "Did you forget about Princess Jinghong? Have you forgotten what His Majesty said before? Situ Xingqian is locked up in the Blessing Palace. His Majesty placed a lot of importance on this matter, and even invited us to guard her together. Even the Empress, who was under house arrest back then, didn't receive such treatment. This shows how much His Majesty cares about this matter. Before this, His Majesty had repeatedly instructed us not to let outsiders know that Situ Xingqian was hiding here. But once this news is released, everyone will know about it. In less than 15 minutes, I believe that all the experts in and out of the palace will immediately gather here. The man who spat out blood slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared at the elder in gray. His Majesty also said that the most important thing is to keep an eye on her. If she's taken away, then we won't be able to bear the consequences. The other two looked at each other and hesitated for a moment. In the end, they did not say anything. They once again spread out and surrounded the gray-robed old man. Since it had come to this, they could only do their best. Seeing the three of them in such a formation, the gray-robed old man was stunned for a moment before he suddenly laughed out loud. Looks like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Don't blame this old man for being impolite. Stop him. The three of them also made up their minds and charged forward together. The four of them instantly engaged in a fierce battle. Now is the time. Chu Luiyue retracted his aura and quickly headed for the Blessing and Harmony Palace. At the same time, several incomplete Xian formations appeared around her. Compared to the gigantic Xian formation above, this small Xian formation did not have any sense of existence. However, the patterns in light were able to envelop Chu Luiyue's body. Chu Luiyue kept moving forward, completely hiding his figure in the countless streams of light. The most important thing was that even though the few Xian formations that she copied weren't complete, they were more or less compatible with the Xian formation above. It was precisely because of this subtle compatibility that the Xian formation directly ignored Chu Luiyue's intrusion. Chu Luiyue's path was smooth and unobstructed. She successfully arrived at the side door. Previously, Emperor Jiawen had exited from this inconspicuous spot. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue silently sneaked in. Her actions were very fast, and she disappeared behind the door in the blink of an eye. She did not even attract the attention of the gray-robed old man and the other three people. After entering the palace, Chu Luiyue immediately started searching for Situ Xingqian's whereabouts. Under the light of the Xian formation outside, everything in the palace was much clearer. However, Chu Luiyue looked around and did not see anyone. The palace was empty, and there was even a thin layer of dust on the table. This place had clearly been empty for a period of time. Chu Luiyue surveyed her surroundings. Suddenly, her gaze focused, and she looked at the bookshelf on the wall. At first glance, there was nothing wrong with the bookshelf, but the books on it seemed to be placed messily. Even if Rongjin didn't stay here long ago, everything here should at least be placed neatly. Chu Luiyue walked over and touched the bookshelf to look for clues. When she saw the inkstone, she knitted her brows. The inkstone's material was very normal, and the carving was average. It didn't look like something that would appear in the palace. She reached out and touched it before she tried to turn it. Ka! The ground under her feet suddenly moved. A staircase that extended downwards appeared in front of her. Chu Luiyue paused for a moment before jumping in. She walked down step by step. The surroundings were dark and damp, and there was only a faint light when she was very far away. However, other than her, there was no one else around. She silently walked forward. After walking for some time, an exit finally appeared in front of her. An extremely sealed space appeared in front of Chu Luiyue. When Situ Xingqian heard the footsteps again, she thought that Emperor Jiawen had returned. Hence, she didn't even look up. She didn't raise her head and said, "I don't know. No matter how much you ask me, I don't know." "What don't you know?" The clear voice of a woman suddenly sounded. Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat, and she finally looked over. Even though that face was blurry, that figure and that voice couldn't be mistaken. Chu Luiyue. She actually came here. Situ Xingqian's mind was in a mess as she clenched her fists tightly, and deep hatred flashed across her eyes. "Chu Luiyue, what are you doing here?" Chu Luiyue walked over, and her eyes were like water as they lightly swept across Situ Xingqian. Her gaze was very calm, but Situ Xingqian felt as if she had been stripped naked. It was extremely embarrassing. "You killed the Empress, right?" asked Chu Luiyue suddenly. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth. "What nonsense are you spouting? You also let Rongjin out of Crown Prince Mansion, right?" asked Chu Luiyue again. "No, I didn't. Why? Did Emperor Jiawen send you to interrogate me? Situ Xingchen's voice was filled with intense anger. If looks could kill, Situ Xingchen's venomous gaze would have cut Chu Luyue into pieces. Chu Luyue's expression didn't change, as if he didn't care about her answer. What did you get from the Empress? Hand it over. As Chu Luyue spoke, he stretched out his hand. Situ Xingchen suddenly widened her eyes. How does Chu Luyue know about this? Chu Luyue's eyes sparkled. If you're more honest, I can tell you who the real Heaven's chosen son is. Digression. I'm so sleepy that I can't open my eyes. I can't take it anymore as I sit in front of the computer. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 426. The Real Heaven's Chosen Son. Hearing this, Situ Xingchen's heart skipped a beat. How did you know? Shouldn't only the Empress and Rong Jin know about this? Could it be that Rong Jin told Chu Luyue about it before? No, why would Rong Jin tell others about such an important thing so easily? Even if he likes Chu Luyue a little, he wouldn't go to this extent. Besides, Chu Luyue clearly knows that Rong Jin isn't the real Heaven's chosen son. Other than the few of us who were in the Imperial Mausoleum that day, who else would know about this? Situ Xingchen looked at Chu Luyue warily. Suddenly, an idea popped up in her mind, and she couldn't help but blurt out. She suddenly blurted out, "You were also in the Imperial Mausoleum that day?" As she was shocked, her hoarse voice became sharp. Chu Luyue shrugged and nonchalantly said, "There's no such thing as a wall. I'll tell you one thing. I'm only going to ask you one last time. Will you give it to me or not?" Situ Xingchen grabbed the railing, and her eyes sparkled. Since you already know about this, I don't have to hide it anymore. I got the key to Golden Inheritance Peak's barrier from the Empress. Even though the Empress secretly copied it, it can still open the barrier. Besides, I've already given that thing to Rong Jin. If not, how do you think he could enter Golden Inheritance Peak so smoothly? Chu Luyue raised his brows. When she saw Rong Jin and the rest enter the Imperial Mausoleum with Emperor Jiawen, she had already guessed this point. But this wasn't the main point. You know that's not what I want, Chu Luyue lightly said. Situ Xingchen forcefully pretended to be calm, and said without changing her expression, "The Empress only gave me this." Oh! Chu Luyue smiled in a seemingly smiling manner. If it's really that simple, why would Emperor Jiawen use such a huge force to lock Situ Xingchen up? He even specially came here to secretly interrogate her on a dark and windy night. Initially, she didn't think of this, but after seeing Emperor Jiawen and the terrifying defense around her, she guessed that Situ Xingchen had something that Emperor Jiawen wanted. Judging from Emperor Jiawen's attitude toward Heptagon Alley, he should know the real secret behind it. Hence, he didn't want to get anything out of Situ Xingchen, but wanted to get something. She was just casually bluffing, but judging from the other party's reaction, she was basically certain. Situ Xingchen felt guilty under Chu Luyue's stare. How could this be? From the beginning to the end, she was extremely secretive, and was not discovered by anyone. If I wasn't caught by Emperor Jiawen in the Imperial Mausoleum, I wouldn't be trapped here. She turned around, as if she didn't want to continue the conversation with Chu Luyue. It seems that there's nothing more to say between us. The moment she turned around, she quickly looked at the jade bracelet on her wrist. The two dots of light had already overlapped. This was something that Elder Zhongyi had specially given to her when she left Mingyue Tianshan. This jade bracelet contained one Dao Sect's Elder Zhong's strength. Relying on this, he could quickly find her no matter where she was. When she was locked here, she immediately asked Elder Zhongyi for help. Now that the two dots of light overlapped, it meant that Elder Zhongyi was nearby. However, he didn't come even after a long time. Instead, Chu Luyue came. Hong! 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 A series of explosions suddenly came from outside. Even the entire space started to shake. Situ Xingchen suddenly looked up. Elder Zhongyi is fighting with someone outside. She was elated. Elder Zhongyi is very strong, so it shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with these people from country Yaochen. As long as he can bring me away from here. Situ Xingchen. Chu Luyue suddenly spoke. Situ Xingchen instinctively turned around. Hua! Something suddenly flew towards her face. The alarm in her heart went off, and she immediately wanted to retreat. However, she was currently trapped in this metal cage, and her position was extremely small. She had just taken a step back when she touched the railing. She waved her sleeves and harshly swept that thing away. Chu Luiyue lightly raised his brows. Situ Xingqian's force was indeed suppressed, and she couldn't even use a bit of force at this point. Emperor Jiawen really made all the necessary preparations to deal with me. However, this time, I'm going to benefit from it. Chu Luiyue, don't think that I can't do anything to you just because I'm trapped here. Situ Xingqian quickly glanced at the ground and realized that it was actually a jade bottle. After it landed on the ground, it directly broke, and a green liquid slowly flowed out. Smelling that weird smell, she coldly laughed. You want to poison me with just this small bottle of Qingshui Yang? Qingshui Yang's poison was very strong, but she didn't even touch it previously, so it was completely useless. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up into a smile. You're mistaken. I haven't done anything yet. Situ Xingqian was instantly dazed. A silver light suddenly flew out from Chu Luiyue's fingertips. It directly splashed into the small puddle of Qingshui Yang. Bang! A light sound was heard, and a ball of purplish-green smoke rose up. Situ Xingqian's face changed drastically, but the next moment, the purplish-green smoke rapidly rushed toward her. She hurriedly covered her mouth and nose. Don't you know that Qingshui Yang's poison will instantly increase by a few times when it comes into contact with dabin powder? Besides, the most convenient thing is that as long as this thing touches your skin, even if it's just a little bit, it will instantly seep into your organs. A terrifying burning sensation came from her hand. Situ Xingqian lowered her head to take a look, and saw that her originally smooth and white skin was actually rapidly drying up. It also had a mottled purplish-green color. It looked very scary. What's going on? What did you do to me? Situ Xingqian screamed in shock. Chu Luiyue raised his brows slightly, glanced at her hand, smiled and nonchalantly said, Oh, I see. It seems like you really don't know that the side effect of this poison is that you'll rapidly age, from the outside to the inside. Now it's your hand. Later it should be your face. As he spoke, Chu Luiyue shook his head in pity. This is mentioned in the footnote on page 582 of the Celestial Physician's Handbook. As a celestial physician, you actually didn't even read this. Situ Xingqian was furious. The Celestial Physician's Handbook was a very basic medical book, and it was also a beginner's book for all celestial physician. However, there were too many things to remember in it. Who would pay attention to a small footnote? Now the thing that scared her the most was her face. Chu Luiyue, you're really sinister and vicious. Situ Xingqian's hands trembled. If Rong Xiu knows that you're such a vicious woman, he'll definitely regret marrying you. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 427. Chu Luiyue chuckled lightly. You're finally admitting it? From the start, Situ Xingqian had been hostile toward her. No matter if it was during the Qing Jiao competition, or when Situ Xingqian framed her for imprisoning Rong Zhen. Situ Xingqian could tell that Situ Xingqian didn't just dislike Situ Xingqian, but she was also jealous and resentful of her. Situ Xingqian's chest seemed to be blocked by something, and she felt so stifled that she was about to explode. She finally couldn't hold it in and harshly scolded her. So what if he is? I've liked him for so many years, but he doesn't even remember who I am. What about you? You're just an abandoned good-for-nothing from a declining family. How can you compare to me? In terms of looks, I'm not inferior to Chu Luiyue. In terms of background, I'm many times better than Chu Luiyue. In terms of my relationship with Rong Xiu, I've been with him at Mingyue Tianshan for so many years. How can Chu Luiyue compare to him? He's always been high and mighty, and keeps all women at a respectful distance. But you, he actually knelt down in front of so many people for you, all for the sake of a marriage agreement with you. I'm clearly the one who understands him the most. Only I'm worthy of him in this world. Situ Xingqian's heart ached every time she thought of this. She didn't understand what was so good about Chu Luiyue, that Rong Xiu was willing to treat her like this. It's as if He gave all his gentleness and love to only one person. Previously, when Rongxiu sent people to burn the clothes with the cloud embroidery, she still had a sliver of hope in her heart. But later on, everything happened one after another, and they all slapped her in the face. Every time, it made her understand that Rongxiu cared about this person more than she imagined. Situ Xingqian's hatred for Chu Luiyue also deepened. Chu Luiyue looked at her face, which was contorted from anger and hatred, and lightly smiled. How do you know that he doesn't know? Situ Xingqian's expression suddenly froze. Since you claim to understand him then, do you know why he did this? Chu Luiyue said slowly. Every word was like a sharp knife that harshly stabbed Situ Xingqian's heart. The blood drained from her face in an instant, leaving behind a face full of fear and unwillingness. That's right. How could someone like Rongxiu not know what kind of person Chu Luiyue was? But he still chose her. There was only one explanation. He was deeply in love with Chu Luiyue. She was the only one he wanted. From a very long time ago, she knew that people like Rongxiu would only fall in love with one person if they didn't fall in love. Once they did, they would only love one person for the rest of their lives. And they would give everything they had. You, what exactly did you do? Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth, and her knuckles turned green from gripping the railing too tightly. At this moment, she inadvertently looked down and saw that her wrist had also turned purple. She was taken aback. If I really turn into an old lady with bruises all over my body, then in the future, there will be no future. Once she thought of that scene, she felt goosebumps all over her body. I definitely won't allow myself to become like that. As long as you bring me out, I guarantee that I'll hand the item over to you, said Situ Xingqian hatefully. But you have to guarantee that you'll also cure the poison in my body. If not, even if I go to hell, I'll definitely turn into a malicious spirit and come back to take revenge on you. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up slightly, and he thought to himself, interesting. Seriously speaking, I'm the one who went to hell and came back to take revenge. However, I didn't turn into a malicious spirit, but became Chu Luiyue. Who's afraid of who? It seems like the person outside is here to save you. Chu Luiyue suddenly said. You want to go out with me and take the chance to escape? Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat. I don't know what you're talking about. Chu Luiyue didn't need her answer either. I'm only here to take that item, not to save you. If you don't want to hand it over, then so be it. I've been here long enough. It's time for me to leave. Then, Chu Luiyue actually turned around and left. Situ Xingqian finally panicked. Stop right there. Detoxify the poison first. I can even feel that the poison has already spread to my arm. It wouldn't be long before her face would be completely ruined. Chu Luiyue waved her hand. Seeing that her figure was about to disappear in front of her, Situ Xingqian finally clenched her teeth and said, I'll give it to you. Chu Luiyue stood still, then turned around and smiled at her. Wouldn't it have been better if you did this earlier? Situ Xingqian's face was filled with vigilance. Cure the poison first. Chu Luiyue gently flicked her finger. A palm-sized wooden cover fell. The purplish-green smoke seemed to be attracted by a certain force as it changed its direction and surged toward the wooden cover. When the last wisp of smoke disappeared into the wooden cover, Situ Xingqian finally heaved a sigh of relief. Take the item out, said Chu Luiyue. Situ Xingqian widened her eyes and raised her hands. The poison in my body hasn't been cured yet. When you give it to me, I'll naturally cure it for you. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Situ Xingqian choked and cursed in her heart. This Chu Luiyue is really cunning. He won't take any losses. She hesitated for a while, but she knew that Chu Luiyue could do anything. Hence, she didn't dare to be too presumptuous, and could only touch her jade bracelet. Then, a wooden box appeared in front of her. Chu Luiyue's gaze lightly swept across the jade bracelet. It turns out that it's a cosmic bracelet. This item's value is much higher than a cosmic bag's. This is because it's easy to recognize a cosmic bag, but a cosmic bracelet looks no different from a normal bracelet. This should be one of the reasons why Situ Xingqian could keep this item intact and not let Emperor Jiawen take it away. This is the box that the Empress left behind when she was alive. Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and finally pushed the wooden box forward. As long as you can open this metal cage, The item in this wooden box will be yours. Then, she took another step back, as if she really wanted to hand the item over. However, she sneered in her heart. This metal cage has an extremely strong restriction. If Chu Luiyue wants to take this item, he must solve this problem. If I can't solve it, this item will still be mine. If I can solve it, this metal cage will definitely be opened. I can then take the chance to escape. Anyway, Elder Zhongyi is outside, so I can definitely succeed. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes as if he had a headache. Situ Xingchen quietly stood there, but she was secretly adjusting her breathing, waiting to deliver a fatal blow at any moment. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue lightly said, "Chu Luiyue, Dumpling, bring the item over." A red shadow darted out. It directly pounced toward the wooden box. Situ Xingchen knitted her brows and finally recognized it. It was Chu Luiyue's blood ferret. The next moment she heard a kacha sound, and a hole suddenly appeared on the metal cage. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 428. Situ Xingchen immediately dashed toward the opening. At the same time, she stretched out her hand to snatch the wooden box back. At this moment, Dumpling's figure darted out and directly bumped into the wooden box. The wooden box instantly moved to the side. Situ Xingchen's hand narrowly missed it. Indignance flashed across her eyes, but she didn't hesitate in her actions as she continued forward, planning to leave through the opening. The item in the wooden box is very important, but it can't be compared to my life. As long as I can escape from here, everything will be fine. After I leave, I still have a chance to snatch the wooden box back. However, just as she poked her head out of the hole, a cold wind suddenly attacked her. Bang! Chu Luiyue harshly kicked Situ Xingchen's face. Situ Xingchen's figure instantly flew backward and heavily bumped into the metal cage behind her. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Dumpling directly threw the wooden box out. Chu Luiyue easily caught it and opened it. Inside the wooden box was a roll of goatskin. An indescribably powerful aura spread out from the top of the mountain. Chu Luiyue was certain in his heart. This is it. Pack. Situ Xingchen closed the wooden box again and placed it in her cosmic bag. Her series of actions could be said to be smooth. Situ Xingchen finally recovered her senses at this point. Her mind was buzzing, and her face was in excruciating pain. There was a strong smell of blood in her mouth. She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, but she realized that there was actually half a tooth in it. Chu Luiyue used all his strength in that kick, so she didn't even have time to avoid it and bumped right into it. Just like that, half of her front tooth was forcefully broken. Situ Xingchen's hands trembled as she touched her face. Her face was filled with sticky and sweet-smelling blood stains. It also quickly became red and swollen. She didn't need to look in the mirror to know how disheveled and ugly she looked. Situ Xingchen's lungs were about to explode from anger. Not only did Chu Luiyue snatch the wooden box, but he even disfigured me. This completely broke the last string in her heart. I'll kill you. Situ Xingchen rushed toward Chu Luiyue hysterically. A silver light flashed and a dagger appeared in Chu Luiyue's hand. Then she gently raised her wrist. Chi! A thin blade flew out from the dagger. It went straight for Situ Xingchen's face. Sensing the piercing murderous intent, Situ Xingchen's heart sank, and she immediately dodged. However, with her origin power sealed, and the inhumane torture she had endured these past few days, she was completely exhausted. As a result, her pace was slower than usual. However, Chu Luiyue's flying dagger was very fast. The sound of a sharp weapon piercing through flesh could be heard. The flying dagger directly pierced through Situ Xingchen's left shoulder. A bloody hole appeared and blood splattered everywhere. Ah! Situ Xingchen shrieked and collapsed to the ground. She frantically looked at her shoulder and realized that it was still bleeding. That dark red blood quickly dyed a large area of her clothes red. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood, which was mixed with the originally unpleasant smell. It was almost nauseating. Situ Xingchen was just about to stand up when a second flying dagger flew out from Chu Luiyue's dagger. This time, it was her left ankle. A few pieces of broken bone splattered on the floor. Situ Xingchen was in so much pain that her face was ghastly pale. She couldn't even speak and could only tremble as she curled up into a ball. Only her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared at Chu Luyue, as if she wanted to cut her into pieces. Chu Luyue never cared about such gazes. Boom! A loud explosion came from outside again. It's time to leave. Chu Luyue turned around and ran outside. Situ Xingqian struggled to get up, but she still collapsed in the end. She could only watch as Chu Luyue's figure disappeared into the darkness. Her chest shook, and she vomited blood again. Chu Luyue, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely make her pay back everything that I've suffered today. Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and bit her index finger. A drop of blood quickly flowed out. She then rubbed the drop of blood on the jade bracelet on her wrist. A faint light flashed, and the drop of blood was rapidly absorbed into the jade bracelet, disappearing without a trace. However, the two overlapping dots of light gradually turned blood red. Chu Luyue went up the stairs, and the moment she jumped out, she felt the terrifying aftermath from outside. She looked outside and shockingly discovered that the previously complete and indestructible Xian formation had a few cracks now. It was on the verge of collapsing. In front, the gray-robed elder was already surrounded by many imperial guards. At one glance, there were 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. There were even quite a few corpses piled up at the front. It was obvious that the gray-robed elder killed them all by himself. Chu Luyue knitted her brows. It seems like the gray-robed elder is stronger than I expected. It was also because of this that both parties were in a stalemate. They were in a stalemate. Suddenly, the gray-robed elder lowered his head, as if he were looking at something. His back was facing Chu Luyue, so she couldn't see what he was doing. But the next moment, the gray-robed elder's aura increased tremendously. Anyone who blocks me will be killed without mercy. This low and deep voice contained a shocking amount of energy. An invisible wave spread out in all directions with him as the center. Then, he actually turned around and directly rushed toward Blessing Palace. Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat. He's coming in the direction I'm facing. Voila! The defensive Xian formation was completely torn apart. As long as he enters this palace, he'll immediately discover my presence. Chu Luyue surveyed her surroundings and realized that no matter which direction she escaped in, she would attract attention. Just as she was in a dilemma, a greenish-white fire suddenly started burning from Blessing Palace's side door. This was the scene that Emperor Jiawen saw when he rushed over. The gigantic silver Xian formation had already been torn apart, and a gray-robed elder had already rushed to Blessing Palace's door. The greenish-white fire rose up and instantly surrounded the entire Blessing Palace. His temples suddenly throbbed, and all the blood in his body seemed to have solidified. Stop him! Stop him! Situ Xingqian is still inside. This person clearly wants to use the fire as a smokescreen to bring Situ Xingqian out. This definitely won't do. Actually, Emperor Jiawen didn't know that the gray-robed elder was also trapped in the fire. The fire started very suddenly, and it was very fierce. Even though he was a stage 6 warrior, it was a little troublesome to deal with it. At the same time, Chu Luyue, who was in the palace, saw the jumping fire and quickly rushed out of the window at the side without hesitation. When she jumped into the fire, her body was instantly wrapped in a layer of red fire. A figure suddenly appeared in front of her. It blocked her path. It's that mysterious person. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 429. Chu Luyue immediately became alert. Is he going to attack me at this time? The wide hooded robe completely covered his body, and there was a black scarf on his face. From head to toe, he only revealed a pair of narrow black eyes. Chu Luyue saw that pair of eyes. A strong sense of familiarity surged in her heart. Chu Luyue's pupils constricted. A name was stuck in her throat, as if it would jump out at any moment. He looked at her just like that. His eyes were like a pool of stagnant water without any ripples. However, Chu Luyue instantly understood what he meant. She looked at him and slowly extended her hand. Her fingertips were still trembling slightly, but in the end, she slowly and firmly made a gesture. Finally, the man's expression changed. The next moment, something suddenly flew out of his sleeve. Chu Luyue's eyes flashed with silver light. The next moment, she felt as if her entire body had been dragged into a strange space. Her surroundings were dark, and a strong sense of oppression instantly surged. However, Chu Luiwa did not panic. That was because she knew that this was a yuan tool specially used for teleportation, the Heaven's Shadow Ring. This item was extremely precious. Even in the Tianling dynasty, it was a priceless treasure. This was because this Heaven's Shadow Ring only needed to inject a small amount of force into it to instantly teleport a person from one place to another. According to the distance of teleportation, it was divided into different grades. The higher the grade, the rarer it was and the safer it was. Chu Luiwa had this before, so she was quite familiar with it. After sensing it, she was sure that this should be considered a high-grade Heaven's Shadow Ring. Although the pressure of the spatial turbulence made people feel uncomfortable, there was nothing to worry about. Furthermore, she could feel that the person was standing not far from her. Even though she could not see anything, Chu Luiwa was not worried. Only that pair of long and narrow eyes kept flashing in her mind. She took a deep breath and suppressed all the questions and emotions in her heart. Not long after, the surrounding pressure suddenly disappeared. Chu Luiwa heaved a sigh of relief. He looked up and realized that he had returned home. The lamp in her room was still burning, emitting a faint light as if she had never left. Looking at the moon hanging in the night sky, Chu Luiwa did a rough calculation. The entire process took less than 2 hours. A gaze that seemed to materialize fell on her body. Chu Luiwa's heart skipped a beat. He took a deep breath and finally turned around. Their eyes met. Chu Luiwa's hands curled up slightly in his sleeves before he finally opened his mouth. "You came here today to help me get something from Situ Xingchen?" The man didn't speak, but the expression in his eyes changed. Chu Luiwa couldn't describe that feeling. Her heart felt like it was stuffed with thick and soft cotton, making it hard for her to breathe. However, vaguely, there seemed to be a small ray of light that pierced through the heavy fog in front of her, giving birth to some hope and anticipation in her heart. The two of them fell into silence. Chu Luiwa knew what she was waiting for. She even knew what the other party was waiting for. The cool moonlight shone down, elongating the two of their shadows. Chu Luiwa's hands tightened and loosened. She actually started to sweat in this cold night. After a while, she opened her mouth. Her throat was dry from nervousness. At the foot of the southern mountains, every word and sentence was spoken clearly and clearly. That originally clear voice had become slightly hoarse at this moment, and it carried a faint bitterness and deep yearning. The man's gaze finally stirred up a huge storm. He finally opened his mouth and said his first sentence of the night. 13th, you return. The next moment, he lifted his clothes and knelt on one knee. His right hand was tightly pressed against his left chest. Empress concubine, receive a bow from Chi Han. It's him. It's really him. Even though she had already guessed his identity, when she heard it with her own ears and confirmed it herself, her heart still beat wildly. It was as if a flame had spread from the bottom of her heart, causing her entire body to burn. Everything around her suddenly became blurry, and only the figure of the person in front of her became clearer. Chu Luiwa had fantasized many times about whether someone would see through her appearance and see through her true identity. She thought of many people, but she didn't expect it to be the 13 Yu guards. Furthermore, it was at this time and in such a place. At the foot of the southern mountain, the 13 Yu guards had returned. This was the secret message between her and the 13 Yu guards. Other than them, no one else knew about it. Therefore, when Chu Luiwa said the first half of the sentence, it was equivalent to admitting her identity. She closed her eyes and turned to walk into the house. Come in and talk. Yes. Chu Luiwa walked into the room, and Chi Han followed behind. After locking all the doors and windows and making sure that no one would notice anything unusual, Chu Luiwa sat down on the stool. She looked up and saw Chi Han standing at the side with his back straight, but his eyes were still looking at her from time to time. Obviously, Chi Han's doubts and shock about this were no less than hers. Chu Luiwa lifted her chin. Sit. Chi Han immediately said. Thank you, Your Highness. Chi Han can just stand. Chu Luiwa finally couldn't help but laugh. After not seeing each other for so long, things had changed, but Chi Han's personality hadn't changed at all. Sit. I'm no longer your master. You don't have to be restrained. Chi Han immediately knelt down again. The 13 new guards will always only have you as their master. He paused and lowered his voice. Don't tell me, you don't want us again this time? Chu Luyue felt a lump in her throat. When did I not want you? Get up first. However, Chi Han was very stubborn. You haven't returned for so long. I have to kneel a little longer to make up for this period of time. Chu Luyue couldn't help but laugh, but her eyes were red. If you don't get up, you can go back now. Chi Han hesitated for a moment, then got up and stood at the side with his back straight. After pausing for a moment, he said, After you left, this subordinate had nowhere to go. Chu Luyue turned her face away and held back the tears in her eyes. After a while, the waves in her heart calmed down. Tell me, how have you all been in the past year? How did you find this place? Chi Han said. Actually, before you got into trouble, we already sensed that something was wrong and planned to go back. But on the way back, a few groups of people appeared and tried to kill us. By the time we rushed back, you had already. More than half of the ancestral hall had been burned. Chu Luyue was stunned. So you went back that day? Chi Han nodded. It's all my fault for being too incompetent and being too late. Chu Luyue suddenly thought of something. What's with the burn on your hand? Chi Han paused for a moment. It was burned that day, wasn't it? Chu Luyue asked. Looking at Chi Han's silent expression, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. Take off your face scarf. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 430. Chi Han hesitated for a moment, but he still did as he was told. The 13 new guard had always obeyed Her Highness's orders. When he tore off the mask on his face and lifted his hood, Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat. The left cheek and neck of the young man in front of her were covered in burned scars. His originally delicate and handsome face had now become like this. Only his long, narrow, and cold eyes were still the same as before. Why did you? Chu Luyue opened her mouth with difficulty. After saying a few words, she seemed to be choked by something. After knowing that Her Highness was in danger, how could the 13 new guard escape? It's all because of our incompetence that we couldn't save Her Highness. Chi Han didn't care about the damage to his appearance and body. The only thing he cared about was that he went back too late and couldn't protect Her Highness. Chu Luyue didn't speak for a while. She always thought that she had died alone. She didn't expect that. The 13 new guard had already gone back that day. What happened after that? After that, Jiang Yuqing continued to secretly send people to kill us. We planned to join forces with others to avenge you. But, Chu Luyue smiled faintly. Her eyes were calm, as if she was talking about other people. But you found out that most of them had already betrayed me, right? Chi Han hesitated for a moment before speaking. Actually, only a few of them betrayed you. But, because some of them had important identities, things were a little tricky. Plus, we were just your personal guards and didn't have much say so. Chu Luyue nodded in understanding. Even if Chi Han didn't say it, she could roughly guess what had happened back then. It's really difficult for you to do all this. What happened after that? Jiang Yuqing and Sheng Guanwan wouldn't let the 13 new guard off so easily. They would definitely kill them all. How are the rest of the 13 new guard? Chi Han clenched his fists. Don't worry, the others are fine too. Chu Luyue's mood improved a little. Now the 13 new guard was one of the few people she could trust. That's good, that's good. However, Chi Han, why did you leave Heaven's Canopy alone? How did you find me? This was what Chu Luyue was most curious about. Even she herself felt that reincarnating in someone else's body was too ridiculous. How did Chi Han find her? Furthermore, from the looks of it, it was clear that he already knew about it. Most likely, he came here today to seek confirmation. Your Highness, it's not just me. The other members of the 13 new guard are no longer in the Tianling dynasty. A month after the fire in the Imperial Ancestral Hall, Jiang Yuqing framed us for treason and said that it was because he heard about what we did that you went crazy during your cultivation. After that, he issued an arrest warrant for us. After discussing with the 13 new guards, they left Heaven's Canopy together. Chu Luyue's expression turned even colder. Jiang Yuqing has gone too far. Not only did he force her into a dead end, but he also framed the 13 Yu guards. After she died, with Shang Guanwan's help, he could almost do whatever he wanted in the Tianling dynasty. Under such circumstances, the 13 Yu guards' choice to leave was the best choice. Actually, you don't have to leave Heaven's Canopy even if you leave the Tianling dynasty. Each of you is very powerful. It's a waste of your talents to go outside. Chu Luiyue felt that it was a pity. Qi Han shook his head. Your Highness, you don't know. The reason why we left Heaven's Canopy was because we received a letter. Chu Luiyue paused. What letter? A letter about you. At this point, Qi Han suddenly looked up and fixed his gaze on Chu Luiyue. The letter said that if we wanted to avenge you, we had to leave Heaven's Canopy first. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Who wrote that letter? Anonymous. Even now, we don't know who wrote it. But, under the circumstances, we didn't have any other choice, so we just did it. What? Chu Luiyue was shocked. It's just a letter, and you actually believed it and did it? The 13 Yu guards were carefully nurtured by her. Each of them was powerful and cautious. Why would they make such a choice because of a letter? Wasn't this too careless? Qi Han's expression became a little strange. Because the handwriting in the letter is exactly the same as yours. Most importantly, there's a token of yours in it. Chu Luiyue almost thought that she had misheard, and immediately frowned. Many people had seen her handwriting before. It was not impossible for someone to imitate it. The 13 Yu guards would not believe the words in the letter just because of the similar handwriting. In that case, the token in the letter became extremely important and had a decisive effect. What token? A feather of the 9-colored heavenly pheasant. Chu Luiyue suddenly stood up. The 9-colored heavenly pheasant was her fiend back then. Back then, she chose to perish together with the 9-colored heavenly pheasant and purposely let it out to save its life. But from everything that happened afterward, the 9-colored heavenly pheasant had clearly died that day. And the 9-colored heavenly pheasant's feather was extremely precious. It was the symbol of its status. Ordinary people couldn't even touch it, let alone pluck it off. Before she died, the 9-colored heavenly pheasant's feather was clearly still 9 neat and tidy. Since it was dead, how could anyone get its feather? Where did the feather in the letter come from? Digression, mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 431. In the entire Tianling dynasty, she was the only one who had a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. The 13 Yu guards had followed her for many years, so they definitely wouldn't be mistaken. It was because of that feather that we believed the words in the letter. And, from then on, we always thought that you were actually still alive. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If she was dead, she was indeed still here. If she was alive, she had actually just woken up a few months ago. So, after leaving Heaven's Canopy, we split up and secretly searched for your whereabouts. This time, it was also because this subordinate had inquired about some information that caused me to have some doubts about your identity. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. So, when you came just now, you deliberately made that gesture? Yes. You're so sure that it's me. Looking at Qi Han's confident look, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh. Qi Han said honestly, I heard that Mu Qinghe was here, so I followed her on purpose. Chu Luiyue's smile froze. At first, I just wanted to know why she stayed here for so long. Later, I realized that something seemed to be wrong, so I started to secretly investigate you. Qi Han made it sound simple, but he had actually made ample preparations before coming here. Before he came, he already had a lot of confidence in his heart. Whether it was the astonishing talent of cultivating all 3 skills, or the extremely similar expression in her eyes, he couldn't help but think more. But most importantly, especially when I saw that you brought a gift for Hong Yao that day, and Hong Yao's attitude toward you was so familiar, I was certain of my guess. Chu Luiyue was stunned. You know all this? Qi Han nodded honestly. Chu Luiyue. She actually didn't notice at all. Although her current strength couldn't be compared to before, her sensitivity and reaction had always been good. In the end, Qi Han had secretly investigated her for so long, but she actually didn't notice at all. After a long silence, Chu Luiyue finally said faintly, "It's been a while since we last met. I haven't seen you for more than a year, but your hiding skills have improved." A suspicious shade of red flashed across Chi Han's unburned face. "Your Highness is too kind. Seven Coldness still had a lot of shortcomings." Chu Luiyue. This brat really thought that it was praising him. However, looking at his scarred face, Chu Luiyue felt distressed. If everything was still fine, is there a way to remove your scar? Chi Han was stunned. He didn't expect her to suddenly change the topic. He touched his face and said, "Actually, this is quite good. Many people can't recognize my identity, so it's much more convenient to do things." Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something. Wait, could it be because that flame was mine? At that time, she was inconsolable, so she simply chose to self-destruct. She wanted to perish together with Jiang Yuqing and Sheng Guanwan, so she released all the power in her body and burned it. How terrifying is the power of the fire produced by the Tianjing Yuan Meridian? If not, it wouldn't have been able to give the two of them such a harsh blow. I just didn't expect it to implicate Chi Han. Normal herbs can't heal this kind of scar, because the Tianjing Yuan Meridian's power must have been left inside. If I can heal my Tianjing Yuan Meridian, I might be able to easily solve this problem. Chu Luiyue rubbed her glabella. Okay, since you're done talking about this, tell me who told you about Situ Xingqian and asked you to come, right? Seven Stars' body froze. At the same time in the palace, Blessing Palace was completely surrounded by greenish-white flames. The flames shot up to the sky and almost lit up half of the night sky. The Imperial Guards and a few strong warriors outside were all trying to barge in. However, the fire produced by the phosphor powder was very strong, so normal water was useless. Seeing that the fire was getting bigger and bigger, the crowd became increasingly anxious. Emperor Jiawen stood at the side, and no matter how the crowd persuaded him, he refused to leave. The bright and scorching fire shone on his face, making his face look even darker. "Your Majesty, don't worry. We've set up a Xian formation around Blessing Palace again, and it's heavily guarded. Anyone who comes out from there won't be able to escape successfully." Chu Ning, who rushed over later, tried to persuade him. Emperor Jiawen placed his hands behind his back and didn't say anything as he stared at Blessing Palace closely. No one knew what he was worried about. Upon seeing this, Chu Ning didn't say anything else as he turned around and rushed to the front, leading the Imperial Guards to strengthen the defense. At this moment, Elder Zhongyi finally crossed the flames and rushed into the main hall. The moment he entered, he saw someone coming out from the ground not far away. It was Situ Xingqian. Elder Zhongyi was elated and immediately rushed over. "Xingqian." When Situ Xingqian heard this familiar voice, she immediately looked up. "Elder Zhongyi." Elder Zhongyi then saw the bloodstains on her face and body, and his expression changed drastically. "What happened to you?" When he walked closer, he then realized that not only was Situ Xingqian's force sealed, but her shoulders and ankles were also injured. At this moment, she couldn't even walk normally. Situ Xingqian's eyes were bloodshot and filled with deep hatred. It's Chu Luiyue. She was the one who stole my things and injured me to this extent. Elder Zhongyi, you must avenge me." Elder Zhongyi's heart ached terribly. "Don't worry. When we get out of here, I won't let her off." Situ Xingqian was suddenly stunned and suddenly grabbed his shoulders. No. She just came out from below. You should have seen her." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 432. Elder Zhongyi knitted his brows. "She came out. But I didn't see anyone just now." An ominous feeling rose in Situ Xingqian's heart. "You really didn't see her? Then what about now? Is she still hiding somewhere here?" This place has already become a sea of fire. With her own abilities, how can Chu Luiyue successfully escape from this place without a sound? As she spoke, she agitatedly grabbed Elder Zhongyi's arm. Elder Zhongyi's heart ached when he saw her frantic and crazy expression. I wonder how much torture Xingqian went through inside for her to become like this. He comforted her. Xingqian, don't be anxious. Let's leave this place first. We'll talk about the rest later. Definitely not. Situ Xingqian screamed shrilly. She took that wooden box. I spent so much effort to get this thing from the Empress. How can I let Chu Luyue snatch it away just like that? I'm definitely indignant. Elder Zhongyi knitted his brows and asked, What wooden box? Is it very important? Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in. She didn't tell anyone about the wooden box and kept it carefully. Even when she asked Father and Elder Zhongyi for help this time, she only said that Rong Jin was the fake heaven's chosen son, and that she was implicated. Facing Elder Zhongyi's question, she instantly felt guilty. Why yes, it's more important. You must help me. Elder Zhongyi surveyed the surroundings, and his expression was tense. But, Emperor Jiawen, and the rest are already here. And there will be more and more people. The later it takes, the harder it will be for us to leave. Also, I don't know who set this fire on purpose. We must get out of here as soon as possible. If not, your body alone won't be able to take it. He was very strong, but it wasn't easy for him to bring Situ Xingqian out in her current state. Besides, he hid his identity this time. If Emperor Jiawen and the rest knew who he was, and the news spread to Mingyue Tianshan, he would definitely be in trouble. Xingqian, don't worry. Since you know that it was Chu Luyue who stole your things, you'll have the chance to snatch them back in the future. Then, he carried Situ Xingqian on his back, and planned to find an opportunity to rush out. Situ Xingqian was in a dilemma, but she knew that this was the best choice given the current situation, so she could only accept it. A silver barrier instantly enveloped the two of them. The light flickered and covered most of their figures. From the outside, it was impossible to see who was inside. With a tap of his foot, Elder Zhongyi instantly charged out of the greenish-white sea of fire and into the air. They're out. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the besieging crowd. Several figures immediately chased after him. Emperor Jiawen closely stared at the unity boundary. Even though he couldn't see their faces, he could vaguely see that there were two people inside. His heart sank. One of them must be Situ Xingqian. Stop them at all costs, Emperor Jiawen ordered. Chi. Countless sharp arrows flew out, but they were all blocked by the silver barrier in the end. But just as they were about to escape, a figure suddenly appeared. They were blocking their way. When Elder Zhongyi saw that person's face, his expression immediately turned solemn. It's actually Yi Zhiding. The next moment, the other party's words completely stunned him. Long time no see. How have you been? Yi Zhiding recognized me. Thoughts flashed across Elder Zhongyi's mind. I've only met Yi Zhiding a few times, and the other party hasn't even seen my face. How can he confirm my identity? Yi Zhiding smiled as he waved the fan in his hands. Since you're here, why don't you sit down and have a drink? Elder Zhongyi guessed that Yi Zhiding was just bluffing. He didn't even plan to reply as he crazily circulated the force in his body. In an instant, the pressure on the barrier became even stronger. It then rapidly flew to the side. Elder Ye's smile didn't change as he waved his wrist, and the fan was instantly flung out. Hua! The moment it flew out, the fan actually fell apart and transformed into numerous white feathers that flew toward Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingqian. The sound of the feathers piercing through the air was heard. In the blink of an eye, those white feathers actually flew to the surroundings of the barrier. He was completely surrounded. Elder Zhongyi immediately felt a strong suppression coming toward him. The surrounding space also gradually became heavy and stagnant. Even their speed started to slow down. Elder Zhongyi was shocked. Yi Zhiding's fan is actually so powerful. At this moment, one of the white feathers suddenly pierced forward. Chew! The sound of something breaking was heard. Then, Elder Zhongyi was shocked to see that a crack had appeared on the silver barrier around him. A white feather slowly pierced in. He immediately wanted to repair it, but it was already too late. The next moment, that white feather suddenly dissipated. The entire barrier also instantly transformed into countless rays of light and scattered in all directions. The veil hat on his head was also crushed by this terrifying force. But just as the two of them were about to be exposed to the crowd, Elder Yi suddenly shouted, "Stop! Collect!" The moment he said this, the white feathers instantly multiplied and connected with each other in layers. They completely covered Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingchen's figures. Such a huge commotion happened in the palace, so it naturally couldn't be hidden. Very quickly, countless pairs of eyes in the imperial city looked in that direction. In the dark night, only the fire that shot into the sky was eye-catching and shocking. Quite a few people started to secretly guess. Did something happen in the palace? During this period of time, the imperial city really wasn't peaceful. After just a few days, the Empress passed away. Rong Jin was deposed, and even the palace was burning. The entire imperial city's atmosphere seemed to become much heavier as a result. In the darkness, something seemed to be moving. It was unsettling. At this point, Chu Liyue's room was completely silent. After asking that question, Qi Han fell silent. Chu Liyue quietly looked at him. She wasn't suspecting Qi Han. If not, she wouldn't have directly admitted her identity. However, Qi Han clearly didn't explain some things clearly. Even if what he said previously was reasonable, he just coincidentally followed Mu Qinghe here, and found her by following the clues. But, if he didn't know something, how could he be so sure that a young girl from a declining family and country, Yao Chen, would be the high and mighty princess back then? Besides, even fewer people knew that she wanted to snatch the things in Situ Xingchen's hands. Could it be that Qi Han found out all of this by himself? Mu Qinghe also suspected me, and the two of them even interacted quite a bit. But because of her completely different appearance and body, as well as her impeccable identity, he couldn't confirm it for a long time. How did Qi Han find out? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 433. Qi Han knew that he could not hide it anymore. After thinking for a while, he finally opened his mouth. After thinking for a while, he finally said, "Your Highness, this news came from Zhenbao Pavilion." Chu Liyue was stunned. Second Master Yan? Qi Han nodded, and then shook his head. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. Did the head of Zhenbao Pavilion order Second Master Yan to pass this news to you? A look of surprise flashed across Qi Han's eyes. He did not expect her to figure it out so quickly. However, Her Highness has always been intelligent, so it's not strange that she could think of this. I went to Zhenbao Pavilion to buy herbs before. Later on, I found a letter in the box they sent. That letter, Chu Liyue understood. I see. If it's that person, it's not strange. This person has a mysterious background and is very resourceful. Country Yao Chen's imperial mausoleum is almost completely under his control, let alone others. But, if he deliberately told Qi Han this, doesn't it mean that he already knows my identity? Chu Liyue asked. What about the letter? Qi Han said. That letter was specially treated. After I opened it and read it, I burned it. Chu Liyue felt a little regretful. The other party was obviously very cautious, and didn't want to leave any traces. Qi Han glanced at her carefully. Your Highness, I didn't tell you before because I didn't want you to worry. I originally planned to tell you after I found out that person's identity. In this world, other than the 13 you guards, there's only one other person who knows Her Highness' true identity. In fact, he even found out before they did. After Qi Han received the news, he felt very conflicted. On the one hand, he was overjoyed and excited that Chu Liyue might be Her Highness. On the other hand, he was secretly worried that the other party would use this to do something that would harm Her Highness. Chu Liyue thought for a moment, smiled faintly, and shook her head. You want to find out his identity? I'm afraid it's a little difficult. Also, since he already knows and told you, there's nothing to worry about. He has helped me so many times. If he wanted to deal with me, why would he need to spend so much effort? That person's strength and background are both extremely strong. From today onwards, don't waste any more time and energy investigating him. Qi Han was a little surprised. Just who was that person to make His Highness so fearful? And, judging from His Highness' tone, he seems to be somewhat familiar with that person? Your Highness knows that person? No, I don't. Chu Liyue said straightforwardly. She actually wanted to know the identity of the first master more than anyone else. But the other party clearly didn't want her to know. So why should she waste her energy? When it was time to know, he would know. Since Chu Liyue had said so, Han naturally did as he was told. Where are the other members of the 13U Guard? Do they know me? They're not in country Yao Chen, but we've always been in contact. But I haven't told them about you. Before personally confirming His Highness's identity, he would not reveal it without permission. Chu Luiyue smiled with satisfaction. Well done. You're still as cautious as ever. She had no choice but to acknowledge Han today. The 13U Guards were still loyal to her, and they were a huge help to her. However, the fewer people who knew about her identity the better. Don't let them know about this first. When the time is right, I'll tell them personally. Han immediately replied. Yes, Your Highness. After straightening out all these matters, Chu Luiyue felt much better. Last question. Her slender and fair fingers tapped lightly on the table as she asked, enunciating each and every word. Did Mu Qinghe betray me? Zhong Yi were both smart people. Let's not beat around the bush. Inside the palace, Elder Zhong Yi and Situ Xingqian were trapped in a cage made of white feathers, and they couldn't move at all. Elder Yi stood in front of the two of them and looked down at them from above. Emperor Jiawen was standing at the side. Other than that, there was no one else. Elder Zhong Yi didn't say anything, and Situ Xingqian seemed to have fainted due to excessive blood loss. I know a thing or two about Mingyue Tianshan's rules. If news of you barging into country Yao Chen's palace gets out, it won't be good, right? Yi Jiding still had a smile on his face, but the words he said made Elder Zhong Yi break out in a cold sweat. Even though Mingyue Tianshan accepted disciples like the other clans, there was a bottom line. They didn't allow anyone to interfere with the country's affairs. Elder Zhong Yi had committed a huge taboo. Not only would he be punished, but he might even be chased out of Mingyue Tianshan. Yi Jiding, what exactly do you want? Shouldn't I be the one asking you that? It's the middle of the night, yet you came all the way here, barged into Blessing Palace, and even forcefully took her away. Speaking of which, isn't this all your fault? You're twisting the truth. Xingqian is country Xing Luo's eldest princess. You shouldn't have locked her up like this. Elder Zhong Yi was even angrier when he said this. You tortured her until she doesn't look like a human anymore. Yet you're blaming me. You're too much. Sigh, you can't say that. Didn't you burn Blessing Palace just now? It would take a lot of effort to completely extinguish such a strong fire. Some of the palaces at the side also suffered the same fate. Elder Zhong Yi was so angry that his beard trembled. I didn't set that fire. Elder Yi was dazed. Why not? Didn't you plan to set the fire and take her away in the chaos? Why would I use such a despicable method? If it weren't for that fire, I would have left with Xingqian long ago. You wouldn't have the chance to speak here. Looking at the agitated and angry Elder Zhong Yi, Yi Jiding became suspicious as he exchanged glances with Emperor Jiawen. Could it be? It really wasn't him. There's no harm in telling you today. There's someone who entered the Blessing Palace before this old man. Also, he even attacked Xingqian. He crippled one of her shoulders and one of her legs. When Elder Yi heard this, he immediately knitted his brows and carefully looked at Situ Xingqian, who had fainted on the floor. This injury wasn't caused by Emperor Jiawen? Emperor Jiawen also realized that something was amiss. He immediately stepped forward and stared at Elder Zhong Yi. Who is it? Elder Zhong Yi sneered. You all know this person too, Chu Luiyue. Impossible. Old man Yi denied it without thinking. How could this be done by his precious disciple? How is it impossible? This was something Xingqian had said herself. Yi Jiding, Chu Luiyue is your disciple, right? She came and left so smoothly today. Could it be that you're secretly helping her? T. Yi Jiding directly swore. How can you believe Situ Xingqian's words? She had a grudge with my disciple long ago. She must have taken the chance to frame her. Elder Zhong Yi chuckled in disdain and looked at Emperor Jiawen. Xingqian also said that Chu Luiyue stole something from her. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Digression. I'm going out for a while, and I'm updating at night. A better reading experience comes from Yuan. Chapter 434. Hearing this, Elder Yi thought that this was bad. Didn't His Majesty also want to find something from Situ Xingqian? Since Zhong Yi said this, he might be suspicious. As expected, he turned around and saw Emperor Jiawen knitting his brows, as if he were suspicious. Elder Yi immediately asked, Zhongyi, why are you here? Zhongyi, since this is the case, tell me what Luyue stole from Situ Xingchen. Emperor Jiawen also held his breath. Zhongyi was stumped. Situ Xingchen didn't even have the time to tell me. However, I'm sure that it's what Emperor Jiawen wants from Situ Xingchen when he locked her up. His eyes sparkled as he looked at Emperor Jiawen. Emperor Jiawen, you should know best what she stole, right? Elder Yi sneered. Zhongyi clearly doesn't know. He might even be making it up. Emperor Jiawen kept quiet for a while and glanced at the unconscious Situ Xingchen. I'll talk to her about this personally when she wakes up. Elder Zhongyi immediately became alert. What do you mean? I mean that before the matter is investigated, I'll have to trouble Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingchen to stay here for a while. Oh, right, Rongjin and Situ Xingchen's wedding is being prepared. As Situ Xingchen's elder, it's good for you to attend as well. Then, Emperor Jiawen raised his feet and planned to leave. Rongxiao, how dare you? Elder Zhongyi was stunned by his words. In a moment of desperation, he directly shouted Emperor Jiawen's name. Who is that Rongjin? How can he be worthy of Xingchen? If you insist, don't blame me for being rude. Emperor Jiawen stood still and sneered. I'm calling you Elder Zhongyi on account of Mingyue Tianshan. However, this doesn't mean that I'm afraid of you. You're not the only strong person in Mingyue Tianshan. Elder Zhongyi's chest tightened. You've caused such a huge commotion tonight, so you'll definitely attract a lot of attention. Elder Zhongyi, you're a smart person. If you're willing to cooperate, I'll take it that nothing happened today. But if you don't agree, don't blame me for being merciless. One Situyen wasn't enough. Did they think that with Zhongyi, everything would be fine? Elder Yi stroked his beard. I remember that it has indeed been a period of time since I went to Mingyue Tianshan. Looks like I should find some time to go back and pay him a visit. Elder Zhongyi was so angry that his face turned red. He never thought that he would be threatened by Emperor Jiawen and Yi Zhiding. However, this was indeed his weakness. He couldn't bear the punishment of Mingyue Tianshan. If he forced his way through, it wasn't like he couldn't leave this place. But in that case, only Situ Xingchen would be left here. He was truly worried. Thus, after Elder Zhongyi's expression changed several times, he finally gritted his teeth and admitted defeat. He glared at Elder Yi. Yi Zhiding, don't be smug too early. In this old man's opinion, that precious disciple of yours is very scheming. Who knows when I'll screw you over? And you won't even know. Elder Yi smiled and said, Zhongyi, as an outsider, you don't have to worry about the matters between us. If you have the time, you should take more care of Situ Xingchen. If this injury drags on for too long, it'll leave behind repercussions. Alright. I haven't seen you for a few years, and your skills don't seem to have improved. You should take this chance to reflect properly. After Elder Yi said that, he immediately snapped his fingers. Countless white feathers instantly released a strong force, and forcefully separated the two of them. Then they quickly gathered. Elder Yi, I'm afraid we'll have to trouble you these few days, said Emperor Jiawen. Elder Yi nodded. Situ Xingchen was still manageable, but Elder Zhongyi, only Elder Yi could suppress him. Elder Yi waved his hands. I've long found him an eyesore, so I'll take my revenge this time. But, what do you think of what he said previously? Emperor Jiawen hesitated for a while and finally said honestly, I think it might be possible. Elder Yi knitted his brows. Does this mean that your majesty really suspects Lu Yu? Emperor Jiawen smiled bitterly and shook his head. I have no choice. Others don't know how important that thing is. But you know it best, Elder Yi. I'm not doing this for myself but for the entire Yao Chun. Elder Yi thought for a while. Why don't I go and ask him directly? Emperor Jiawen thought carefully, and instantly felt that this seemed to be the best choice. I've always liked Chu Luyue. On one hand, she's Rongxiu's fiancée now. If I touch her, Rongxiu definitely won't be willing. On the other hand, there's also Mu Qinghe. Then, I'll have to trouble you, Elder Yi. The fire in the palace burned for the entire night. It was only completely extinguished when the sun rose the next morning. The entire Blessing Palace had been completely burned down, and even the surrounding halls had become ruins. Quite a few palace servants had also lost their lives. It was rumored that the Blessing Palace had not been maintained for a long time, so it accidentally caught fire and caused this fire. Actually, anyone with eyes would know that the greenish-white fire wasn't an ordinary fire. It was most likely caused by phosphor powder. Ordinary people didn't even have this thing. It was obvious that this matter had deep implications. However, since the palace had already given an explanation, nobody would be so insensible as to investigate further. However, the Blessing Palace used to be Rong Jin's residence. Now that he was just crippled, such a fire started. It was hard not to think too much. This time, he clearly didn't have a chance to turn things around. Princely Mansion. Early in the morning, Eunuch Min personally came over and said that His Majesty had summoned Rong Xiu to the palace. Everyone in Princely Mansion was very surprised. His Majesty had always thought highly of Rong Xiu. Considering that his body wasn't well, he rarely let him enter the palace. Today this meeting came out of the blue. However, Rong Xiu didn't seem to think too much. After simply packing up, he put on a black cloak and followed Eunuch Min into the palace. Emperor Jiawen was waiting in the imperial study. Father. When he saw Rong Xiu enter and wanted to bow, Emperor Jiawen immediately said, "There's no need for that. You don't have to be so formal. I called you here today because I have a few things to ask you." Rong Xiu's jade-like face was as gentle as usual. "I'll tell you everything I know." Emperor Jiawen opened his mouth, but he hesitated in his heart. Rong Xiu was his most beloved son. For so many years, he felt very guilty that he couldn't accompany Rong Xiu by his side. Hence, after Rong Xiu came back, he had been thinking of ways to make it up to him. Asking him this question now, it's unavoidably inappropriate. Rong Xiu quietly stood there as if he didn't see Emperor Jiawen's dilemma. After a while, Emperor Jiawen finally clenched his teeth and made up his mind. He asked, "Rong Xiu, when the palace was on fire last night, something went missing. Someone said that it was Lu Yu who did it. What do you think?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iYuan. Chapter 435. If other people were here and heard this, they would definitely be shocked. This matter has a lot of implications, yet Emperor Jiawen directly asked about it. This shows how much he trusts Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu widened his eyes, and shock flashed across his eyes. "Father, did you call me here just for this?" Emperor Jiawen looked at him solemnly and didn't say anything. Rong Xiu's lips curved up slightly, and a light flashed across his eyes. "Father, are you suspicious of Yuer?" Emperor Jiawen rubbed his glabella. "Rong Xiu, you've always been the smartest." He had to admit that Elder Zhong Ye's words did make him waver. Last night, he almost didn't sleep well for the entire night, as he kept thinking about this. Why did it have to be Chu Luyue out of so many people? Besides, judging from Chu Luyue's various shocking performances during this period of time, she might really be hiding some secrets. Even though Elder Yi had already promised to personally ask Chu Luyue, he was still worried. However, Chu Luyue's identity was special, so he couldn't and wasn't willing to touch her easily. Hence, he could only ask Rong Xiu to come. Rong Xiu thought for a moment and suddenly said, "There's a problem. Father, you don't seem to know about it." Emperor Jiawen sat up slightly. Rong Xiu still had a smile on his face, but there was a playful look between his brows. "Situ Xingchen, she admired me for many years." Emperor Jiawen was instantly dazed. Very quickly, he understood something. Could it be that Situ Xingchen is especially hostile towards Chu Luyue because of this? Emperor Jiawen slowly knitted his brows. Even so, she shouldn't purposely frame you. After all, she already had a marriage agreement with Rong Jin. What good does it do her to provoke Chu Luyue? Rong Xiu's smile deepened, but it was tainted with a layer of coldness. Imperial father knows best what is going on with the engagement between her and Imperial brother. Emperor Jiawen fell into deep thought. I don't know if father still remembers that I went to the arena on the last day of the Qin Jiao competition. Emperor Jiawen nodded. Of course I do. That day, I originally wanted to ask Yuer for help, but I met Situ Xingchen off stage. This sun inadvertently discovered that her sleeves were embroidered with cloud patterns that were almost exactly the same as this sun's. Rongxiu's tone was slightly cold. Emperor Jiawen's heart thumped. In the past, Rongxiu really loved that strange cloud pattern. Many of his clothes were embroidered with that pattern. Maybe it's just a coincidence. After I returned that day, I thought about it and felt a little uncomfortable. So I ordered the servants in the manor to burn all the clothes with that cloud pattern. Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. He had some recollection of this incident, but he didn't pay much attention to it back then. He just thought that Rongxiu wanted to throw all the clothes away because he had just recovered from a serious illness and wanted to change his mood. He didn't expect this to be the reason behind it. That day, Situ Xingqian also arrived outside Princely Mansion and saw this scene. After leaving, she went to a remote alley and personally killed a few cultivators. She dismembered their corpses and chopped them into a pile of mush. Only then did she stop. Rongxiu spoke slowly, but the content made one's heart skip a beat. Father, do you think that this is also a coincidence? Emperor Jiawen finally couldn't sit still and suddenly stood up. Where did you find out about this? Rongxiu calmly smiled. Father, if I don't even know who went to Princely Mansion and what kind of attitude they had toward me in the imperial city, how can I continue living? Emperor Jiawen looked at him with a complicated gaze and didn't say anything for a while. Yeah, I almost forgot. Even though Rongxiu's body was weak, he was very smart. He had stayed in Minghua Tianshan for so many years. If he didn't even have this bit of ability, it would really disappoint him. Those few people usually hang around the various casinos and brothels in the imperial city, and they usually attract a lot of hate. After they died, nobody cared about them. This incident was suppressed just like that. However, if you want to confirm it, it's very easy. You don't have to say anything. I believe you. Emperor Jiawen tiredly waved his hands and leaned against the chair. Rongxiu kept quiet. The room fell into silence once again. Emperor Jiawen's thoughts were in turmoil. Anyone would be able to tell that something was wrong with this matter. For so many years, Situ Xingqian had always been high and mighty, gentle, and elegant in everyone's eyes. But from this incident, it was obvious that she wasn't like that at all. In actual fact, after interacting with Situ Xingqian these few days, he already had this feeling in his heart. However, he didn't expect her to be even more vicious than he imagined. Linking all of these incidents together, many doubts were instantly resolved. This means that Situ Xingqian purposely targeted Lu Yu several times because her love turned into hatred? In this case, there would be a logical explanation for Situ Xingqian's involvement in Rongzhen's incident and her accusation of Chu Luyue for no reason. Rongxiu lightly smiled. I didn't say that. Father, you have your own judgment of who's right and who's wrong. Emperor Jiawen opened his eyes and looked at Rongxiu with a deep gaze. I didn't expect that the first time you chose to confess to me was because of Chu Luyue. By saying all of this, Rongxiu was undoubtedly admitting that he had his own power in the imperial city. He was far from being as aloof from worldly affairs as he had shown before. He definitely knew that this was a huge taboo for emperors. Aren't you worried that I'll be wary of you? Asked Emperor Jiawen word for word. The sunlight shone in from the window and reflected in Rongxiu's eyes. He said, I'm just choosing the more important option after weighing the two options. And I'm his most important and only choice. Almost at the same time, Chu Luyue was waiting for Elder Yi in her yard. So many things happened the night before. So Situ Xingqian would definitely point me out and expose everything to Emperor Jiawen. Thus I was already prepared. However, I didn't expect it to be my mentor. Chu Luyue smiled and went up to him. Mentor, what brings you here? Elder Yi looked at her and suddenly asked in shock. When did you break through and become a rank 3 warrior? If I didn't remember wrongly, didn't this girl just become a stage 2 warrior during the Qing Jiao competition? Why did she become so fast? Moreover, the aura on her body seemed to be different from before. If Elder Yi carefully checked Chu Luyue's Yuan Meridian, he would know that this slight change was caused by the upgrade of her Yuan Meridian. Chu Luyue's eyes curved into crescents. I just broke through 2 days ago. I learned quite a lot at Tai Yin Academy's library, so I tried to break through recently. As expected, I succeeded. Elder Yi thought about it, and felt that it made sense. He had long known that Chu Luyue had a lot of force in her body, so it was only a matter of time before she broke through. You're indeed my disciple. Aha! Upon seeing Elder Ye's happy face, Chu Luyue's lips curled up, and she seemingly reminded him unintentionally. Why are you here today? Is there a reason why you came to find me today? Elder Ye's laughter suddenly stopped. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 436. Actually, he wasn't willing to make this trip. Chu Luyue was his only disciple, and he couldn't wait to dote on her, let alone question her. But if he didn't ask, he wouldn't be able to answer to Emperor Jiawen. After much thought, it was more suitable for him to do it. Elder Yi coughed. Girl, where were you last night? Chu Luyue blinked. Of course I was at home. If not, where else could I be? Old Mr. Yi carefully observed her expression. He always knew that Chu Luyue was stronger than what she showed. At the very least, she was above his standards in terms of medicine refinement. He knew very well that this girl had many secrets. But he didn't want to suspect her because of this. You should know that there was a fire in the palace yesterday, right? Chu Luyue nodded and smiled. It's hard not to know about such a big fire, mentor. Elder Yi thought for a while and finally asked directly, what happened last night? What happened yesterday, did it have anything to do with you? Chu Luyue blinked. What do you mean? Elder Yi stared at her closely, and after a while, he couldn't help but slap his thigh. I knew that Situ Xingchen did it on purpose. Tell me what exactly happened. Why did she want to kill you? Chu Luyue was speechless. Even though she knew that Elder Yi would side with her, this was too straightforward. Chu Luyue lightly coughed. It's a long story. Make it short. He still has to rush back to discuss this with Emperor Jiawen. Oh. Chu Luyue shrugged. She thinks that I snatched her man. Elder Ye's expression instantly became strange, and he was even a little speechless. Rongxiao. Chu Luyue nodded. Situ Xingchen personally told me last night. How could it be wrong? Elder Yi suddenly took a step back and sized up Chu Luyue. Mentor, what are you looking at? Asked Chu Luyue strangely. Elder Yi suddenly chuckled. No wonder. No wonder. So it's because of this that Situ Xingchen kept trying to drag you down. Chu Luyue's eyes twitched. For some reason, she seemed to hear a whiff of smugness. Enough. Master already knows. Just focus on your cultivation at home. There was no need to care about anything else. Old Man Yi said and turned to leave. Suddenly, he turned his head and asked. By the way, did Mu Qinghe say when she was leaving? Mu Qinghe's eyes moved slightly, but she quickly suppressed the slight ripples and shook her head gently. Not yet, but it should be soon. Mu Qinghe had gained nothing from the trip to the Imperial Mausoleum, so she definitely wouldn't stay for long. Old Man Yi nodded. His expression became more serious as he warned. Going to the Tianling dynasty is a great opportunity. You must make good use of it. But the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Elder Yi hesitated for a while, and finally swallowed them back down. If you want to leave, you must inform Master in advance. Chu Luyue nodded. Today was the day of the Empress's funeral. Originally, everything was well prepared, but the sudden fire in the Blessing and Harmony Palace caused everyone to be in a state of panic. Even though Emperor Jiawen was very sad, he still decided to keep the Empress's funeral simple. In the end, only the noble consort's funeral was held. Emperor Jiawen collapsed from excessive worry, so he couldn't attend the Empress's funeral. Rong Jin suffered consecutive blows and was bedridden. He didn't even leave Crown Prince Mansion's doors. Oh, now that the plaque had been removed, it couldn't be considered Crown Prince Mansion anymore. In the end, only Prince Ping, Rong Qi and Rong Zhen went. But out of the two of them, one had been a rich man's son for many years, and didn't have any real power, while the other had a shattered pearl of essence, and was completely useless. Even if they were added together, they didn't have much of a presence. As for the Xi family, only a few people went. The Empress's entire funeral was very simple. It started in a hurry and ended in a hurry. At this point, Everyone could tell that Emperor Jiawen did this on purpose. As the Empress, she was the country's mother. After her death, she should hold a national funeral to show her status. But now, the funeral wasn't even as grand as a consort's. If the Empress didn't do something to anger His Majesty when she was alive, why would she have such an ending after her death? All sorts of rumors circulated on the streets, but they all silently disappeared in the end. Not long later, the crowd threw the Empress's death to the back of their minds and started discussing another matter. The Crown Prince position is empty, and His Majesty will definitely choose a new Crown Prince from the few princes. Emperor Jiawen didn't have many sons, but there weren't many who were suitable to be the Crown Prince. After much discussion, the crowd finally realized that the best candidate was the third prince, Rongjio. In terms of capabilities, he entered the Northwest Army and fought on the battlefield for many years. He had many outstanding military achievements. In terms of age, he was in his prime. He was also the second-ranked prince after Rongjin. Other than his low birth status, he had almost no flaws. Almost everyone was certain that Rongjio would become the new crown prince. But the current Rongjio wasn't so optimistic. This was because he had already been locked up in the residence for a few days. The Empress's funeral had already ended, but father still hadn't let him go. This inevitably made Rongjio worried. At this point, he suddenly heard that father urgently summoned Rongjin into the palace. It seemed like the two of them had talked for a long time in the imperial study. The longer he waited, the more uneasy Rongjio felt. Finally, on this day, someone came to the palace. The Empress was killed by the third prince, Rongjio. From today onwards, he will be locked up in the heavenly prison and await his punishment. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI.net. Chapter 437. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Rongjio was originally the most suitable crown prince among the few princes, and many people had already secretly started thinking about how to get close to him. They didn't expect him to be imprisoned for such a heinous crime overnight. At that moment, the entire imperial city changed. I heard that the third prince's birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the Empress back then. He held a grudge for many years, so he took action against her. Who knows about the harem? But even if it's true, the third prince is too impulsive. As long as he can become the crown prince, he can do whatever he wants. Why did he have to take action at this juncture? After the Northwest Army came back, His Majesty didn't let him go back for a long time, so he's naturally anxious. Besides, the Empress's funeral was so simple. Can't you see the problem? Even if His Majesty hates the Empress, he can't let the third prince kill her. He deserves it. These few princes are either crippled, locked up, or sick. If this continues, there's nothing to pick on. When Chu Luiyue walked past the streets, she could vaguely hear some whispers. Even though they weren't allowed to talk about it openly, it was hard for people not to notice with so many things happening in the palace. When she arrived at Princely Mansion, she realized that the security here was obviously much tighter. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. The entire imperial city was in chaos, and it wasn't easy for Princely Mansion to stay out of it. Seeing Chu Luiyue, the guards at the door hurriedly welcomed her. Ms. Luyu, you're finally here. His Highness has been waiting for you for a while. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly as she walked in. When she saw Rongjio, he was taking a nap in the backyard's bamboo forest. On the stone table were 2 cups of freshly brewed tea and a half-finished chess game. A light breeze blew over, and a few green bamboo leaves landed on Rongjio's snow-white robe, making him look even colder and more noble. Your Highness, you knew I was coming? Chu Luiyue brushed away the leaves in front of his eyes and walked over. Rongjio picked up the porcelain cup that was as clear as jade. A white mist rose in spirals, making it almost impossible to see the expression in his deep eyes. His scarlet lips curled up slightly, and his smile was as gentle and calm as ever. This is the tea that I personally brewed. Let's see how it compares to yours. Chu Luiyue sat down and picked up another cup. A strong fragrance wafted over, lingering at the tip of his nose, refreshing his mind. Chu Luiyue took a sip. After the faint bitterness, there was a sweet aftertaste. She nodded honestly. Your Highness' cooking skills are much better than mine. Compared to him, the ones she had picked up were really not worth mentioning. Rongxiu smiled and shook his head. But this prince only likes Yuer's ginger tea. The tea is good, but I don't like it. Chu Luiyue glared at him. Your Highness is still in the mood to joke at a time like this? That's exactly what I was thinking. Rongxiu raised his brows. Also, what do you mean by this time? Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. The entire imperial city is in a mess, but only this person can leisurely brew tea and play chess in his own backyard. He's really calm. She shook her head and cut to the chase. You already knew that His Majesty was going to do something to the third prince? Previously, Rongxiu had mentioned that someone wanted to frame Rongjiu and blame him for the Empress's death. However, Chu Luiyue never expected that person to be Emperor Jiawen. No matter what, Rongjiu is his biological son. His actions are no different from sending Rongjiu to his death. Rongxiu's expression didn't change, and his lips curled up into a casual smile. Since you know what's going on, why do you have to ask me? This is an admission. Chu Luiyue knitted his brows and was still confused. But why did His Majesty do this? If he didn't want Rongjiu to inherit the throne, he had many ways. At the very least, Rongjiu was trapped in the imperial city and had almost all of his military power confiscated. He couldn't do anything. Besides, Rongjiu had fought on the battlefield for many years and had many achievements. Even without his identity as a prince, his contributions were still significant. Why must Emperor Jiawen be so ruthless? His Majesty knows that the person who killed the Empress is Situ Xingqian. Until now, this news had been tightly sealed. Are you suspecting that father is siding with Situ Xingqian? Asked Rongxiu with interest. Chu Luiyue shook his head. Judging from the situation that night, Emperor Jiawen definitely didn't want to let Situ Xingqian off. He just wanted to get something from her. However, there's really no need to frame Rongjiu for the Empress's death. She knew very well that the royal family was heartless, and she even had an unforgettable painful memory. However, Emperor Jiawen clearly had other motives for doing this. Rongxiu smiled lightly. If he knows his place and is an idle prince in the imperial city, father naturally won't do anything to him. He can make father decide to do this. Looking at his meaningful expression, Chu Luiyue suddenly understood something. Your Highness, you mean that the third prince? Rongxiu placed a chess piece down. Pack. Chu Luiyue looked down, and his heart skipped a beat. Once this piece was placed, the originally deadlocked black and white chess pieces on the chessboard instantly broke the stalemate. They crazily fought each other. Rongjiu actually wants to rebel? If not, I really can't think of any other reason for Emperor Jiawen to do this. Your Highness, how did you know? Once Chu Luiyue asked this, he couldn't help but regret it. As long as Rongxiu wants to, he can know everything. However, Rongxiu's expression became strange. Chu Luiyue looked at his eyes, and suddenly widened her eyes in shock as she thought of something. Could it be? Rongxiu looked at her with a deep gaze, and his lips suddenly curved up as he waved at her. Come over. Chu Luiyue stood up in confusion and walked over. Rongxiu held her hand, pulled her into his embrace, and tightly hugged her as he bent down and kissed her. Chu Luiyue was taken aback, and her heart trembled slightly from his scorching aura. What's wrong with this person? Why is he so sudden? Why, Your Highness? Chu Luiyue pushed his shoulders, but he hugged her waist very tightly, as if he wanted to embed her in his embrace. Rongxiu only stopped when he kissed her until her limbs turned weak, and she melted into a puddle of spring water in his arms. He then switched to a light kiss. Chu Luiyue looked at him, and her eyes that were as bright as the night sky became moist, as if a pinch would overflow with sweetness. Rongxiu's eyes flashed, and he reached out to cover her eyes. He moved closer to her ear, and said in a low and hoarse voice, as if something was rubbing against his heart. Don't look at this prince like that. Chu Luiyue's ears also heated up. Your Highness, you knows this prince best. Rongxiu suddenly couldn't help but bite her delicate earlobe. Chu Luiyue felt itchy, but her body went soft. Rongxiu buried his face in her neck and closed his eyes. She always knew what he was thinking, from the past to the present. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 438. Chu Luyue naturally didn't know what Rong Xiu was thinking. His hot breath landed on her neck and behind her ears, making her feel itchy. The breeze blew, and the bamboo forest swayed. Chu Luyue instantly became much more awake. No wonder Rong Xiu kept looking at the entire imperial city's military strength distribution. It turns out that he had long been preparing for this day. Rong Xiu had stayed in the imperial city for a few months, and didn't even leave the city. Now that he suddenly decided to rebel, someone was clearly adding fuel to the fire. And this person was Rong Xiu. Your Highness, when did you start planning all this? Chu Luyue couldn't help but ask. Rong Xiu's low voice sounded by her ear. Oh, it's quite early. When did third brother go to the Northwest Army? His tone was casual and calm, as if this was just a small matter. Chu Luyue was shocked and pushed him away. She looked back and stared at Rong Xiu in disbelief with her black eyes. Your Highness, you mean, but he didn't ask to go. Chu Luyue's words stopped abruptly. Suddenly, an extremely absurd idea appeared in her mind. Rong Xiu saw her rare shocked look, and a smile flashed across his eyes. It's not easy to see her reveal such an expression. Seeing his expression, Chu Luyue opened her mouth, but she didn't say a word. What else do I have to say? He's clearly admitting it. All these years, Rong Xiu's every move was actually under Rong Xiu's control. No matter if it was his determination to join the army after being bullied by the Empress and the Crown Prince, his outstanding military achievements, or his current situation where he had nowhere to go. It was clearly all in Rong Xiu's plan. But it's dangerous to nurture a tiger. Now, Rong Xiu wants to go against Emperor Jiawen, but he'll definitely become Rong Xiu in the end. Chu Luyue's heart was in turmoil, and she finally couldn't help but ask. Did you tell His Majesty that the third prince was going to rebel? Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly. You're underestimating father. Since third imperial brother had done this, how could imperial father not have noticed? I don't have much to do with this matter. I'd be a fool if I believed you. Chu Luyue cursed in her heart. Perhaps Rong Xiu also had a part to play in Rong Xiu's plan to attack. Third prince doesn't know about this? Rong Xiu raised his brows slightly. What do you think? Chu Luyue gasped and slapped her forehead. My brain short-circuited too. If Rong Xiu knew it, Rong S's. The Northwest Army's 5,000 elites are about to reach the imperial city. Rong Xiu gently caressed her slender and soft waist as he nonchalantly said. As for when they'll fight, it depends on father and third brother. According to Rong Xiu's personality, they shouldn't wait for long. Besides, father will punish Rong Xiu in the next few days. Chu Luyue put her hand down, opened her eyes and looked at him. Isn't all of this in your hands, Your Highness? Today, everything is under Rong Xiu's control. Rong Xiu chuckled. If I didn't hear wrongly, are you praising me? Chu Luyue was speechless. Is the praise more important than the matter itself? Country Yao Chun is about to change. However, Rong Xiu didn't seem to care about it. Looking at her shocked and confused face, Rong Xiu laughed for a while before finally saying, Don't worry. Don't worry. Lord Chu Ning will be leaving the imperial capital with a group of people today to investigate some matters. If the Imperial Guards and the Northwest Army fight, Lord Chu Ning won't be implicated. Did he purposely send father away for me? Her conversation with Rong Xiu contained too much joy. Chu Luyue's mind was filled with thoughts, and she didn't know what to say for a moment. She looked at Rong Xiu with a complicated gaze. This man was devilishly handsome, extremely talented and terrifyingly scheming. But he just had to be so honest with her that she didn't know how to face him. He had plotted for so many years, and played such a big game of chess. Yet he told her so easily. Your Highness, aren't you worried that I'll tell others about this? Asked Chu Luyue with knitted brows. Rong Xiu looked at her in shock, as if she had asked a very stupid question. Which woman in this world would put the man she loves in danger? Chu Luyue was speechless. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this sentence. But why does it sound so strange? I. Chu Luyue stuttered, and her usually eloquent tongue seemed to be in a knot at this point. After a while, she finally decided to give up and not harp on this matter. However, she still had the strangest and most important question. Your Highness, why are you doing this? One was his father, and the other was his brother. In their bones, the same blood flowed in their veins. Rongxiu's actions were equivalent to starting a fight between Emperor Jiawen and Rongxiu. A war was about to break out. No matter who won or lost in the end, what was the point to Rongxiu? Rongxiu thought for a moment and chuckled. Oh, I just felt that it was too troublesome to fight for it. So I found someone to do it for me. Chu Luiyue was dazed. He did it for me. He's talking about fighting for the throne, right? How can he replace something like this? Besides, the most important thing is that if Rongxiu really wanted the throne, why did he have to pretend to be sick for so many years? According to Emperor Jiawen's love for him, as long as Rongxiu displayed his true abilities, no, just a small portion of his abilities, Emperor Jiawen would definitely make him the crown prince. Chu Luiyue actually wanted to ask, but for some reason, she had a strong feeling that it was best not to ask. Rongxiu must have his reasons for doing this. After reacting for a while, Chu Luiyue finally found her voice. But if that's the case, won't the throne be the third prince's? A faint smile appeared on Rongxiu's face, but there was an indescribable suppression in his eyes. He slowly said, You are. Who do you think helped third brother contact the Northwest Army and made him take the last pill of confidence and decide to mobilize the army? Of course it's my people. Emperor Jiawen gathered all the officials to discuss Rongxiu's punishment. After an intense debate, they finally came to a conclusion. The third prince Rongxiu has committed treason. He took the chance when Emperor Jiawen asked him to take care of the Empress, harmed the Empress, and tried to destroy the corpse. His crimes are utterly devoid of conscience, and the heavens cannot tolerate it. He will be beheaded at the Meridian Gate. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 439. Early in the morning, the imperial city's streets and alleys were filled with people. Whether it was out of curiosity, pity, or some other reason, everyone rushed to the Meridian Gate. The execution ground was tightly guarded by armored imperial guards. Rongxiu had not been brought over, but the surroundings were already filled with people. It was very noisy. This third prince has made great contributions in the Northwest Army a few years ago. He's very impressive. Who would have thought that he would become a prisoner in the blink of an eye? His achievements are enough to intimidate the emperor. He hasn't even stepped out of the imperial city's gates these few months. Isn't it obvious what the higher-ups are thinking? From what I see, the crime is fake, and the execution is real. But among the remaining princes, the third prince is the most suitable candidate for the crown prince. Isn't it too heartless to do this? How much do we know about the palace? Anyway, that person is still in his prime. After a few more years, the princes below him will also grow up, right? It's a pity that the third prince's birth mother has already passed away, and he doesn't have a high status. At this time, there's no one who can help him. The crowd discussed fervently, and they had different opinions about this matter. However, everyone knew that everything was already set in stone by now. Time passed bit by bit, and the sun gradually rose to the middle of the sky. Suddenly, the originally noisy crowd quietened down. The crowd split into two sides, and a path opened up. Everyone seemed to have sensed something, and they all looked over at the same time. A group of people on horses walked over. The person in front was the Xi family head Siyi. He was clearly here today to supervise the execution. Compared to the past, the current Siyi looked much more haggard. His cheeks were deeply sunken, and his eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that the things that happened during this period of time had a big impact on him. After all, the Empress, Xi Huijing, was his biological sister. He had just finished the Empress's funeral, and he had to come here immediately after. He didn't even have time to rest. Xi walked forward step by step. He could clearly feel the countless gazes around him landing on his body. But in actual fact, his body and mind were numb. Originally, he didn't want to come, but His Majesty had given the order, so he could only follow it. A prison wagon slowly followed behind him. The disheveled man in the metal cage was the current third prince, Rongxiu, who was wearing a prisoner's uniform and had his hands locked. He was forced to kneel there with his head slightly lowered. His messy hair fell down and covered most of his face. However, everyone could still vaguely see his current expression, indifferent and cold. His body even carried a valiant aura that could only be obtained after experiencing life and death on the battlefield. In short, there was no trace of panic or despair. Around the prison cart, there were also Imperial guards following closely. However, all those people combined couldn't even compare to Rongjio's aura. Probably affected by some kind of emotion, the places where the prisoner carriage passed by became incomparably quiet. The people standing in front of him, even unconsciously, took a step back. This Third Highness, for some reason, looked a bit inexplicably scary. When they arrived at the execution ground, Siyi raised his hand, and the prison cart finally stopped. "Bring him here." With an order, the Imperial guards at the side immediately went forward and brought Rongjio out of the metal cage. Two extremely sharp swords were pressed against Rongjio's neck as they brought him to the execution ground in the middle. From start to end, Rongjio's expression didn't change much. But when he stood still at the execution ground, he suddenly looked up and glanced in the direction of the palace as mockery flashed across his eyes. It seems like father won't change his decision. Today, he was determined to put him to death. Rongjio retracted his gaze and looked down to hide the murderous intent in his eyes. Unless it was his last resort, he actually didn't want to do this. However, he had been on the battlefield for many years and had experienced countless life and death situations. He didn't expect that he would end up with such an outcome. Anyone would feel hopeless if they were in his shoes. "Hurry up and kneel," yelled the person behind Rongjio impatiently as he harshly kicked Rongjio's knees. However, Rongjio didn't kneel down from the kick. His physical body was as hard as a piece of steel. Seeing that Rongjio didn't kneel down as he wanted, the man who kicked him was shocked. Rongjio slowly turned around and glanced at him. The man immediately felt guilty under her gaze, and an inexplicable trace of fear appeared in his heart. Then he frowned and hollered, "What? What are you looking at? Do you think you're the high and mighty third prince? He's just a criminal on death row, yet he's still so arrogant when he's about to die. Kneel down." That man gave the person beside him a look, and the two of them exerted their strength. The two longswords instantly slit Rongjio's neck, and red blood slowly seeped out. The last bit of hesitation in Rongjio's heart finally disappeared. He slightly bent his knees, as if he was really going to kneel down. However, in the next moment, his body suddenly leaped up and kicked the two people closest to him. His actions were too fast, and the two of them didn't even have time to react before they were harshly kicked away by Rongjio. Siyi immediately realized something and hollered, "Capture! Capture him! Rongjio actually wants to escape." The surrounding crowd also reacted at this point and rushed forward. An enormous figure suddenly appeared above Rongjio's head. Siyi looked over and was shocked. It was a fourth-grade fiend, a white thatched falcon. Voila! That white thatched falcon suddenly spread its wings. Rongjio flipped over and jumped onto it. "Go!" Following a clear cry, the white thatched falcon flapped its wings and flew into the sky. At this point, the surrounding crowd finally understood that it was Rongjio's fiend. When he was locked up in the prison, he didn't have anything else on him other than his prison clothes. But they actually forgot that he had his own fiend. Rongjio had been very low profile these few months in the Imperial City, so they actually forgot that he had such a trump card. Even though this white thatched falcon was a fourth-grade fiend, it was ferocious and had strong combat skills. It was almost considered the top among the fourth-grade fiends. The human and fiends figures quickly flew into the distance. Siyi immediately said, "Prepare. Prepare your bows." The many Imperial guards immediately took out the bows on their backs and aimed at Rongjio in midair. However, right at this moment, a few figures suddenly charged out from the crowd, and they charged towards the Imperial guards. Choo-choo! Messy air-piercing sounds were heard, and many of them deviated from their original directions. They didn't even touch the edges of the white thatched falcon's wings. Siyi looked at the people who suddenly rushed over in shock and anger, and he suddenly widened his eyes in shock. They actually took the initiative to use their killer move. They came prepared. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 440. The crowd instantly fell into chaos. Those people were wearing very normal clothes, and they looked no different from the commoners who were here to join in the fun. It was precisely because of this that their actions were especially sudden. C roughly glanced at them, and there were at least hundreds of them. These people were clearly here for Rongjio. More importantly, from the ruthless moves of these people, it was obvious that they were trained on the battlefield. C suddenly understood something and gasped. Rongjio actually mobilized the Northwest Army to save me. Didn't they say that he handed over his military power after returning to the Imperial City, and didn't contact the Northwest Army again? What exactly is going on with these people's appearance? In just an instant, screams, weapons clashing, and the sound of sharp weapons piercing into flesh were all mixed together. Countless people screamed and escaped. Siyi was about to chase after Rongjio when two people suddenly rushed over from the side and directly blocked his path. The next moment, they actually attacked before Siyi did. Sing! Siyi was forced into a chaotic battle. The two parties had just exchanged a few moves, and he knew that things were bad. These people all killed their way out of a pile of corpses. Even if their cultivation levels weren't as high as his, they were the best at killing people. Once they attacked, every move was fatal. There were no tricks at all. In the midst of the chaos, Siyi looked around and realized that things were exactly as he had expected. The Imperial Guards, who had the advantage in numbers, were gradually at a disadvantage. He flung something out of his sleeves without hesitation. Bang! A signal shot up to the sky. At the same time, Emperor Jiawen was reading something alone in the Imperial study. But after taking 2 glances, he stopped and rubbed his glabella. Calculating the time, it should be about time. Suddenly, Eunuch Min's anxious voice was heard from outside the door. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Something happened. Emperor Jiawen's heart skipped a beat as he walked over and personally opened the door. He frowned and asked, what exactly happened? Eunuch Min was shocked as he hurriedly took a step back and knelt down. Your Majesty, the third prince ran away. Emperor Jiawen's expression turned even colder. What do you mean he ran away? What is Siyi doing? Where are the Imperial Guards? Eunuch Min wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and quickly said in a trembling voice, that's right. Your Majesty, someone has blended into the crowd and started fighting with the Imperial Guards. They escorted the third prince away. The ominous feeling in Emperor Jiawen's heart intensified. This is the Imperial capital. Who would help him like this? They seem to be the Northwest Army. Bang! Emperor Jiawen kicked Eunuch Min's heart. Trash! Eunuch Min fell to the ground with a dull pain in his chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Emperor Jiawen had already strode outside. Send more men immediately. Seal the city gates. Not only Rongjio, but we can't let anyone related to this incident go. Eunuch Min endured the pain and hurriedly followed. Yes. Emperor Jiawen's face darkened. As expected, Rongjio had already secretly contacted the Northwest Army. He had even made such preparations. He planned to escape from the execution ground. Previously, there were even people who wanted to make him the crown prince. What a joke! Rongjio was very ambitious. How could he be willing to be a prince with no real power? Once he became the crown prince, he might not be able to sit on the throne. Emperor Jiawen was walking forward when someone hurriedly rushed over and directly knelt in front of him. Your Majesty! Upon seeing this person, Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. If it weren't for something major, this person definitely wouldn't have appeared here. As expected, that person's next sentence made him feel like he was struck by lightning. Wei Lin led the Northwest Army soldiers here, and they're already 20 miles away from the Imperial capital's gate. They said that the third prince had contributed greatly to the country of Yao Chun and had always been loyal to you. Now, you're listening to the slanderous words of a villain and want to execute him. This really hurt the hearts of countless soldiers guarding the borders. So, They're here to ask you to clear the third prince's name. Emperor Jiawen's figure swayed. Northwest Army's Wei Lin, aren't they Rongjiu's men? How is this clearing Rongjiu's name? They're clearly rebelling. This place is thousands of miles away from the borders, and it takes at least 3 to 4 days for a message to travel back and forth. However, the imperial edict to kill Rongjiu was only issued yesterday. These people came so quickly, which means that they arrived long ago. Now they actually have the cheek to accuse me? Eunuch Min hurriedly went forward to support Emperor Jiawen, but Emperor Jiawen flung him away. The next moment, Emperor Jiawen harshly slapped the person kneeling in front of him. Pack! That man's face was instantly slapped to the side. His cheeks rapidly swelled up. However, he immediately bowed and kowtowed. Your Majesty, please calm down. It's all my fault. You actually only discovered such an important matter now? What use do I have for you? Emperor Jiawen's hand was completely numb from the slap, but his chest was still filled with anger, and his face was green. Your Majesty, those people seem to have come in batches. They only gathered again after all of them arrived. That's why I didn't discover them in time. What kind of place is the imperial capital? We're in charge of guarding the city gates, so how dare we slack off? However, those people from the Northwest Army are too sneaky. We didn't even realize it previously. When we realized that something was amiss, it was already too late. How many people did they send? Asked Emperor Jiawen as he took a deep breath. Around 5,000. Emperor Jiawen panted. 5,000 imperial guards are nothing to worry about. Where's Chu Ning? Get him to bring people over immediately. Your Majesty, did you forget that you just sent Lord Chu Ning out of the city yesterday? Reminded Eunuch Min carefully. Emperor Jiawen was dazed. He then remembered that he seemed to have found some news related to the bronze vat outside the imperial capital. So he had already sent Chu Ning to investigate. They weren't even in the imperial capital now. Let Zhao Ming take over. And you, immediately gather the imperial guards. You must stop them outside the imperial capital's gates. There are more than 10,000 imperial guards, so it shouldn't be a problem to deal with 5,000 people. The man kneeling on the floor seemed to have seen through Emperor Jiawen's thoughts as he braced himself. Your Majesty, the imperial guards are scattered all over the imperial capital. It's already difficult to gather them immediately. The most important thing is that the people who came seem to be the Northwest Army's elites. To this, it's not that I'm afraid, but I know too well how troublesome this situation is. How could a person who could survive on the battlefield be compared to these pampered imperial guards in the imperial capital? If there's no other way, the city gates will fall in no time. Digression. The plot is stuck, and it's very difficult to write. I'll go back and sort out the plot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 441. It was early winter in the imperial city, and the wind was biting cold. Outside the city gates, the soldiers from both sides were in a standoff. Time passed bit by bit, and the afterglow shone down. Outside the city gates, 5,000 elites stood in formation, filled with a strong murderous aura. After looking at them for a long time, one could almost smell the sand and blood mixed in the air. The imperial guards on the city walls were fully armed. A tall man dressed in black armor stood in the middle of the group. This person was the deputy commander of the imperial guards, Zhao Ming. Chu Ning was not around, so he took on the task at the last moment and became the commander of the imperial guards. His eyes were fixed on the front as he shouted in a deep voice. Where is the Northwest Army's deputy general, Wei Lin? His low and powerful voice instantly spread far and wide. A man in red armor took a step forward. I'm here. It was an extremely muscular man who looked no more than 30 years old. He had a beard on his face and looked very fierce. Zhao Ming took a deep breath. Wei Lin was very famous in the Northwest Army. He was violent and strong. Moreover, he was a stage 5 warrior who fought his way out on the battlefield. Just by himself, he could take on 100 people by himself. Not to mention the thousands of soldiers behind him, who were obviously not easy to deal with. Rongjiu was fully prepared this time. According to Yao Chen's laws, The deputy general can't leave the army without His Majesty's orders. He can't bring soldiers into the imperial city. Wei Lin, are you rebelling? Wei Lin laughed. Zhao Ming, it's fine if you're not strong enough. But it turns out that your brain is useless too. I've already said that this is not a rebellion. It's just that His Majesty's actions toward the third prince are unreasonable. He even hurt the hearts of the Northwest Army soldiers. We're only here to help His Highness the third prince, and to seek justice for ourselves. Zhao Ming was about to retort when he suddenly saw a commotion in the crowd opposite him. Then it suddenly split in the middle. A man walked out from the middle. He was wearing armor, and his face was solemn and majestic. It was Rongjio. Zhao Ming's heart sank. Rongjio indeed successfully escaped. After the riot at the execution ground, the Imperial Guards were collectively mobilized to search for Rongjio's whereabouts in the entire Imperial City. However, they did not find anything until he arrived. It turned out that Rongjio had already left the Imperial City during the chaos. At this time, the prison clothes and shackles on his body were long gone. He was dressed in martial attire and looked bloody and fierce. Greetings, Your Highness. Wei Lin cupped his fists and bowed. The soldiers behind him immediately shouted in unison. Welcome back, Your Highness. Their shouts shook the heavens. Rongjio raised his palm and immediately suppressed the voice. When Zhao Ming and the other Imperial Guards saw this scene, they were all shocked. The fact that Rongjio could do this was enough to show his prestige in the military. No wonder he dared to do this. Rongjio looked at Zhao Ming expressionlessly. Zhao Ming, I don't want to hurt the innocent, so I'll give you a chance. Open the city gate. Otherwise, don't blame I for being merciless. How could Zhao Ming do it? Your Highness, doing such a rebellious thing. In the end, he would be spurned by the world. I advise you to repent and be saved. Return with me now and apologize to His Majesty. Rongjio sneered. I have already been labeled as a rebellious person. Since that's the case, I might as well fulfill this label. A trace of uneasiness surged in Zhao Ming's heart. I joined the army when I was 14 years old, and fought on the battlefield for many years, killing countless enemies. There are a total of 23 scars on my body, and every one of them is fatal. I have made great contributions to country Yao Chun, but in the end, all I received was a prison uniform and countless crimes. If he admitted it, how could he be reconciled? Apologize. The person sitting on the dragon throne now did not have the qualifications to order him around from a high position. Zhao Ming said in a deep voice, Your Highness, you. Before he could finish speaking, he saw Rongjio raise his hand high. Then it fell harshly. The first person to break the city gate today will be promoted by 3 levels. 1,000 taels of gold. A low and powerful voice instantly sounded. The countless Northwest Army soldiers behind him instantly became excited. They raised their arms and shouted in unison. Kill! 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 Wei Lin looked up and laughed. Ha 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 ha. Brats, didn't you hear what His Highness said? This time, I won't go easy on you. This city gate. Let me take it. Then, Wei Lin's figure instantly rushed out. When one person moved, 1,000 people followed. Seeing Wei Lin go straight to the city gate, the people behind him followed one after another. Rongjio suddenly pulled out the padao that he always carried with him. The sound of the padao rang out. The wind howled. The next moment, he tipped his toes and personally attacked. Today, he would return all the humiliation and torture that he had suffered in the Imperial City. Zhao Ming immediately said, Release the arrows. The Imperial Guards hidden behind the battlements of the city wall drew their bows in unison. Chi! Chi! Countless black iron arrows pierced through the air. The two sides were completely engaged in a battle. When the city gate was in a tense situation, the Imperial City was also in chaos. Even though a portion of the Imperial Guards were responsible for guarding, the people's hearts were in chaos. The streets and alleys were in a mess, and almost no one appeared. Everyone was hiding in their own homes. After Rongjin was removed from his position, everyone thought that Rongjio would naturally be made the new crown prince. Who knew that not only did he not become the crown prince, but he even directly started a rebellion. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Rongjio had long made preparations. If not, he wouldn't be able to gather the Northwest Army in such a short period of time. For a moment, the crowd couldn't tell if Emperor Jiawen let Rongjio down first, or if Rongjio started the rebellion first. However, Chu Liyue didn't have time to care about all this at this point. This was because Mu Qinghe personally came to her residence. In the room, Chu Liyue slightly widened her eyes. What? Leave now? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 442. Is there a problem? Asked Mu Qinghe coldly as she knitted her brows. The other side kept urging him to go back, and he couldn't delay any longer. Besides, the injuries he suffered in the Imperial Mausoleum had mostly healed over the past 2 days. Now was the best time to go back. That's not it. Chu Liyue thought for a moment. It's just that the Imperial City's situation is a little special. Won't it seem strange if we leave now? The Northwest Army led by Rongjio has already started fighting with the Imperial Guards. It doesn't make sense for us to leave at this time. Besides, I already know that all of this is Rongjio's plan. How can I leave without seeing the results? Mu Qinghe lightly asked in return. Even if they start fighting, what does it have to do with us leaving? It's just a small fight. This small country Yaochen isn't even as big as a state under me. Chu Liyue instantly had the urge to face bomb. A small fight. The deaths of thousands of people, and a country's political power, were just a small fight in Mu Qinghe's eyes. However, with his status, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with saying this. The battles that Mu Qinghe had experienced were indeed much more dangerous and scary than this. No, Vice Admiral Mu. I think you've misunderstood me. Chu Liyue deliberated before speaking. I'm Prince Li's fiancé, so I'm considered part of the royal family. Now that something like this has happened, how can I just leave? At the very least, I have to wait until everything is settled. Mu Qinghe's expression turned even colder. Time is limited. Leave or stay. Choose one. Chu Liyue was in a dilemma. I must go to the Tianling dynasty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If I follow Mu Qinghe back, not only will I be able to do it openly, but I can also hide my identity better. Moreover, it was very likely that they would directly come into contact with Jiang Yuqing and the others. Without this layer of relationship, even if she broke through to the 7th stage, entered the heaven's canopy, and returned to the Tianling dynasty, the situation might not be better than now. But if he left now, what would happen to Rongjio? What about father? She wasn't worried that they wouldn't be able to protect her, but she hadn't explained anything yet. If she left with Mu Qinghe now, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Who knew when he would be able to come back after this trip? Or would he never come back? Chu Liyue pursed his lips tightly and didn't say anything for a while. Mu Qinghe, it's been so many years. Why don't you have any tender feelings for the fairer sex? A mocking and casual voice was heard. Chu Liyue looked up and saw Jian Fengqi. As he walked over, he smiled and said, Prince Li and Miss Chu just got engaged. They haven't even held their wedding ceremony yet. If you ask her to go back with you now, wouldn't you be breaking up the couple? It's so far away. It'll be difficult for the couple to see each other in the future. Mu Qinghe turned his face and looked at him expressionlessly. Jian Fengqi shrugged his shoulders. Not only did he not stop, but he even walked to Mu Qinghe's side and placed his arm on the latter's shoulder as he smiled charmingly. Anyway, the deadline has passed. The others who should go back have already gone back. It's too late for you to set off now. Why are you nervous for a day or two? In my opinion, why don't you do me a favor? Hey, just talk. Why do you have to hit me? Jian Fengqi quickly broke free from Mu Qinghe's grip. He rubbed his wrist that was almost hit and took a few steps back. Fine, fine, fine. Anyway, it's your business. No one else can do anything about it, right? It'll be fine if I don't say anything? Chu Liyue was speechless. Jian Fengqi was a head taller than Mu Qinghe. He also looked tall and strong. Why was he so scared? Looking at this scene from the side, it was really strange. However, she quickly focused on some words in Jian Fengqi's sentence. Deadline. Could it be that there was a time limit for Mu Qinghe's trip this time? And why were there other people? It sounded like many people were going out at the same time to complete a mission. Could it be that they were going to find a cultivator with a Daijing Yuan meridian? Chu Luyue vaguely felt that something was not right. But looking at Mu Qinghe, it was obvious that he would not reveal anything. Mu Qinghe's expression was cold. I have to go back today. Jian Fengqi's expression changed slightly, because his back was facing Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue did not see the change in his expression. But soon, Jian Fengqi's eyes regained their calmness. He crossed his arms, rubbed his chin, and asked tentatively, "Why don't you go back first? Why don't you go back first? Once this matter is settled, this young master will personally escort her back." As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Qinghe immediately said, "No. Why not? Isn't this a very good suggestion?" Jian Fengqi paused and looked meaningfully at Mu Qinghe. "You're busy. You're just wasting time here. Since I'm free, why don't I look after her for a few days? With me around, do you think I'll let her be late?" Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat. Late. Was Mu Qinghe looking for her because he was in a hurry to go back? Miss Chu doesn't want to go back now. Isn't it too heartless of you to take her away by force? Jian Fengqi returned to his usual playful tone. But it was clear that he was serious about this proposal. Mu Qinghe's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. After a moment he finally said, 3 days at most. No problem. Jian Fengqi immediately agreed. Then, he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Chu Luyue. 3 days should be enough, right? Chu Luyue gently nodded. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu. Young Master Jian. She had a premonition that this battle would come to a conclusion in 3 days. What she needed to do was to make use of these 3 days to arrange everything properly. Mu Qinghe glanced at Chu Luyue. With a wave of his wrist, something flew out from his sleeve. Chu Luyue immediately caught it and looked down. This is my token. Take this, and someone will bring you to me when the time comes. Then, he didn't say anything else. With a thought, a long sword flew out and floated in front of him. With a leap, Mu Qinghe turned around and left on his sword. He was very fast, and he disappeared from Chu Luyue's sight in the blink of an eye. Chu Luyue knitted his brows. Young Master Jian, did Vice Admiral Mu go back? Jian Fengqi retracted his gaze, and the emotions in his eyes quickly disappeared. He then changed into his usual carefree smile. He has things to do, so you don't have to worry about him. You, on the other hand, just let me know when you're ready. Chu Luyue's lips curved up. Thank you, young Master Jian. Jian Fengqi's smile deepened. Oh right. I heard that Emperor Jiawen seems to be looking for a bronze cauldron these few days. Is that true? Chapter 443. Chu Luyue's eyebrows twitched. It seemed that Jian Fengqi hadn't been idle during his stay in the capital. He even knew about this. However, his strength was tyrannical. If he really wanted to investigate something, it was likely that not many people could stop him. Thus, Chu Luyue quickly weighed the pros and cons in his heart, and nodded honestly. Young Master Jian is well informed. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows and smiled ambiguously. It's a coincidence. I only found out about this by accident. It was on the day that the item was taken away. Chu Luyue's expression instantly froze. Young Master Jian knows who stole the bronze cauldron? Jian Fengqi's icy eyes flashed with a ripple of light. I said it earlier. I just happened to see it. Of course, that person's face was covered, so I didn't see it clearly. That meant that he really saw it. And it was actually a person. To be able to kill all the guards inside and outside Heptagon Alley in a very short period of time, without even giving them the chance to ask for help. It was enough to show that the person must be a top expert. One must know that there were many rank 4 warriors among them. An ordinary rank 5 warrior would never be able to do this. Chu Luyue looked around vigilantly and lowered his voice. I wonder if young Master Jian can tell me in detail what that person looked like. I can only confirm that it was a man and a rank 6 warrior. As for the rest, I'm not sure. Then did you see where that person went with the bronze cauldron? This? Jian Fengqi paused for a moment and shrugged. I was just surprised that there was another rank 6 warrior here, so I took a second look. Who would care about that bronze cauldron? At that time, he didn't know that it was so important. By the time he saw some clues, the other party had already disappeared. Chu Luiyue could see that he was telling the truth, and could only sigh helplessly. Anyway, thank you. Speaking of which, this matter had nothing to do with Jian Fengqi, so it was normal that he didn't care. However, if you really want to find that person, it's not like I can't help you. Chu Luiyue was taken aback. Didn't you say that you didn't see clearly before? Jian Fengqi smiled wickedly. It seems that young Miss Chu doesn't remember what I do. Celestial physician, celestial physician. You left something on that person? Jian Fengqi knocked her head with his finger. Smart. Chu Luiyue. If it was in the past, he wouldn't have dared to be so impudent in front of her. But now it wasn't the time. Why, do you want me to help you? In any case, you still have 3 days. You have nothing to do anyway. Seeing Jian Fengqi's expression, Chu Luiyue squinted her eyes. This person was still the same as before, eager to see the world in chaos. How was this helping her? He clearly wanted to join in the fun and watch her make a fool of herself. Chu Luiyue's lips slowly curved into an extremely sincere smile. Of course. I'll have to trouble you with this matter, young Master Jian. When this matter is over, Luiyue will definitely reward you handsomely. Jian Fengqi inexplicably shuddered. Chu Luiyue, when she smiled, it was exactly the same as that person's. Every time he saw her smile like that, he felt that disaster was about to befall him. He didn't expect that even though that person was already dead, he still subconsciously felt awe when he saw that similar expression. TSK. This psychological trauma was really too great. Fine. I'll help you. Jian Fengqi hurriedly looked away and took 2 steps back, sizing up Chu Luiyue. In fact, overall, whether it was their facial features or body shape, they didn't look very similar. However, he didn't know why, but when he looked at Chu Luiyue, he would think of that person from time to time. He didn't believe that Mu Qinghe didn't have such misconceptions. If you really go there, Jian Fengqi suddenly thought of something and muttered in a low voice. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to understand his expression and asked gently, "Where are we going?" Jian Fengqi pointed in the direction Mu Qinghe left. "Do you still remember this young master, saying that you somewhat resemble an old friend?" Chu Luiyue nodded. "If they see you, they will definitely be very surprised." Jian Fengqi smiled brightly. He wasn't the only one who had such a psychological trauma. There was nothing to be ashamed of. But Jiang Yuqing and those people, he really didn't know how they would react when they saw Chu Luiyue. It would definitely be very exciting. Thinking of that scene, Jian Fengqi felt that his entire body was healed. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Since you're in such a hurry, I'll help you find him now. Then he took out a small bell. That bell was only the size of a thumb, and it was carved out of blue-green peacock stone. Through the hollow gap, one could see that there seemed to be something gently knocking against the bell, which made a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi focused on listening for a while, and a surprised expression appeared on his face as he looked at Chu Luiyue. That person is still in the imperial city. The atmosphere in the palace was even more tense than outside. In a dark dungeon somewhere, Situ Xingchen was locked up again. Blessing Palace had already been burned down, and she was locked up somewhere else this time. However, Emperor Jiawen specially ordered for more manpower. For 24 hours a day, there were always people guarding within 10 steps of Situ Xingchen, and they guarded her closely. One of Situ Xingchen's arms and legs were crippled, so she could only lie on the floor pathetically. She fainted and woke up a few times. Every time, she hoped that she would be in a different place when she opened her eyes. But no, her heart was filled with despair. Even Elder Zhongyi couldn't save me, let alone the others. I don't know what's going on with father, but there's still no news. I really didn't expect the third prince to really start a rebellion. I wonder if he'll fight his way to the palace. A worried voice could be heard. Situ Xingchen paused and realized that the few people in charge of guarding at the side were softly discussing something. Yeah, no wonder His Majesty was so wary of him previously, and even sentenced him to death. It turns out that he already expected this day to come. So what? Didn't he still escape from the execution ground? I heard that there's already a fight outside the city gates. The Northwest Army's people don't care about their lives. They came prepared. From what I see, they have a high chance of winning. That might not be the case. Other than the Imperial Guards in the Imperial City, there are also the elites from the various aristocratic families. How can it be broken so easily? It's a pity that we have to continue guarding here. If not, we can also find a chance to, Before that person could finish his sentence, he suddenly let out a short scream. The remaining people did not even have time to react before their lives were harvested. Situ Xingchen immediately looked up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 444. A man in a long black robe appeared in front of her. The other party was wearing a black and red ghost mask, which almost covered his entire face. She could only see a pair of cold and indifferent brown eyes. He stood there, and his entire body was enveloped in an extremely strong suppression. The few people who were still talking previously were all on the floor, motionless and completely dead. The thick smell of blood filled the air. Situ Xingchen held her breath, and her hair stood on end. This man is very dangerous. Who are you? She instinctively touched her wrist, but she felt nothing. She then remembered that the bracelet had already been destroyed by Yi Jiding. Now, she had nothing on her that could be used to attack or defend. That man suddenly laughed, and his voice was hoarse. You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know that I'm here to help you. Help me. Situ Xingchen knitted her brows. Who exactly are you? Why are you helping me? She was originally very suspicious, and her experiences over the past few days had almost tortured her to insanity. Hence, when she heard this, she was not happy at all. Instead, she felt even more uneasy. That man did not say anything as he waved his sleeves, and a green glow flashed across. A bronze cauldron appeared in front of Situ Xingchen. At the edge, there were still bloodstains that had long since dried up. Situ Xingchen took a closer look, and her eyes shrunk. This is clearly the bronze cauldron in Heptagon Alley. But didn't I lose this thing previously? Why is it in this unfamiliar man's hands? Besides, he actually brought it over. What exactly do you want to do? It took Situ Xingchen a long time to find her voice. After a short silence, that man finally spoke. Don't you know very well what you should do? Situ Xingchen clenched her fists in her sleeves tightly. Don't say that you don't know. I know very well what you want to do. This thing was originally prepared for Rong Jin, but it's a pity that that idiot still doesn't know what it is. Hence, this belongs to you now. You really want to give this to me? Now. It seems like you're not very willing. As the man spoke, he was about to move, as if he was planning to retrieve the bronze cauldron. Situ Xingchen immediately shouted. Wait. She endured the pain in her body and limped over. She stared at the bronze vat for a while. What are your conditions? She didn't believe that he would help her for no reason. When the time is right, you will naturally know. The man seemed to be too lazy to pay attention to her, and replied impatiently. Situ Xingchen did not dare to ask further, as she slowly touched the bronze cauldron. However, just as she was about to touch him, she suddenly stopped and looked at her hand with resentment. It was withered and purplish, looking extremely terrifying. Other external wounds and even internal injuries could be healed in the end. However, the poison that entered the body was not that easy to remove. The more time passed, the more they accumulated. What if she couldn't return to normal after she got out? What should she do? I have a request. Situ Xingchen mustered her courage and asked. My physical body is seriously injured and I've been poisoned. I wonder if you can help me? The man's gaze landed on her hands. Situ Xingchen looked at him nervously. However, the man's tone was nonchalant. No. Then he turned around and left. Situ Xingchen opened her mouth. But before she could say anything, the man's back view had already disappeared. She gritted her teeth. That person is very strong, and his background is definitely not ordinary. How can he not do anything about the poison in my body? He just doesn't want to help. Situ Xingchen suppressed her resentment and looked at the bronze cauldron again. The surroundings were dark, and the bloodstains at the edges gave off a strange and eerie aura when one looked at them for a long time. Situ Xingchen took a deep breath in and placed her hands on the bronze cauldron. The moment she touched it, the remaining bloodstains on her hands were instantly absorbed by the bronze cauldron. A strange, blood-red glow shot out from within and completely enveloped Situ Xingqian. Chu Liyue followed Jian Fengqi all the way. When Chu Liyue realized that Jian Fengqi was also heading toward the palace, she finally knitted her brows and stopped. Jian Fengqi turned around and looked at her in confusion. "What's wrong?" Chu Liyue glanced at the bell in his hands. "This is Jian Fengqi's treasure, and it almost never makes a mistake." "Young Master Jian, that's the palace. Will that person still stay in the palace after stealing that thing?" Jian Fengqi squinted his eyes. "Do you not believe me? That's not it." Chu Liyue paused. "Just follow me. Don't worry. Since I promised to help you, I'll definitely help you until the end." Upon hearing Jian Fengqi's words, Chu Liyue felt more at ease and continued to follow him. But when the two of them reached the palace walls and were about to think of a way to enter, Jian Fengqi suddenly raised his brows, placed the bell by his ear, and listened carefully. Immediately his expression changed. "He doesn't seem to be here anymore." "What?" Chu Liyue looked around. At this time, no one had passed by this place. "Wasn't he here just now? How could he be over there?" Jian Fengqi quickly turned around. Chu Liyue naturally followed without hesitation. But after taking 2 steps, she couldn't help but look back, and her eyes darkened. After Jian Fengqi had walked for some distance, he realized that Chu Liyue was actually standing there motionless. "Don't you want to track that person down?" Jian Fengqi teased. Chu Liyue shook her head. Then she slowly said, "Why did that person first come to the palace and then leave?" Jian Fengqi paused for a moment, then suddenly understood. "You're saying that he purposely came to the palace?" Chu Liyue looked up and carefully stared at the tall palace walls, as if she wanted to see through the walls and see everything that was happening inside. After a moment, she finally made up her mind. "I want to make a trip to the palace. I have a strong feeling in my heart that that man must have a motive for coming this time. In the palace, the only person closely related to the bronze cauldron is Emperor Jiawen and Situ Xingqian." But just as Chu Liyue was about to think of a way to enter, she was pulled back by Jian Fengqi. "You're going in broad daylight?" Chu Liyue knitted her brows and was about to say something when she suddenly saw a firework appear in the faraway sky. The next moment it suddenly exploded. Bang! A fluttering military flag suddenly bloomed. Chu Liyue's heart sank. The city gate has been broken. Digression. Later there is another update for mobile users. Please browse and read. A better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 445. This speed was even faster than Chu Liyue had expected. "I'm afraid that Rong Jiu will rush into the palace with his men in no time." Chu Liyue's mind raced as she looked at Jian Fengqi and asked, "Where's that person? Where did that person go?" Jian Fengqi pointed in a direction. Suddenly, the bell in his hand let out a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi instinctively threw the bell out. That item quickly broke into many pieces in midair. Then they all fell to the ground. It actually broke on its own. Jian Fengqi's fingers curled up slightly, and he could still feel a slight numbness on his fingertips. However, his mind was blank at this point. This. Chu Liyue looked at him in understanding. "Young Master Jian, it seems like your tracking skills aren't very good. The other party had clearly discovered me long ago." Jian Fengqi's usual smile had long disappeared, and he looked exceptionally cold and stern. He was clearly traumatized. Chu Liyue rarely saw Jian Fengqi with such an expression. If she was free, she would definitely be very willing to admire his expression in detail. However, she was not in the mood now. The other party seemed to be targeting Jian Fengqi, but she knew in her heart that the other party's real motive was to lure her here. Every move that he made previously was on purpose. Jian Fengqi harshly closed his eyes. This was a huge humiliation to him. He had never suffered such a loss in all his years of life. "You're really fast. If I find out who that person is, I definitely won't let him off." Chu Liyue was also very curious about that person's identity, but the other party was one step ahead of her, so there was nothing she could do now. since the other party spent so much effort to lure her here. Wouldn't it be a pity if she didn't go in to take a look? Thinking of this, she turned around and left. Jian Fengqi was shocked. Ah, hey, you're going back now. Didn't you want to go in just now? Chu Liyue nodded. I want to go in. Then you. It's easy to get into trouble if we go in now. Let's wait for the right time. After saying that, Chu Liyue's figure quickly disappeared from sight. Jian Fengqi thought that it made sense. He glanced at the bluebell fragments on the ground with heartache and resentment, then turned around and followed Chu Liyue. At the same time, everyone in the imperial capital saw the military flag and realized that the city gate had been breached. In the palace, Emperor Jiawen, a few family heads, and other important people in the imperial court were all gathered at Chengqian Hall. Everyone was originally discussing how to deal with the Northwest Army's attack, but the loud noise from outside finally silenced the noisy Chengqian Hall. Everyone seemed to have sensed something, and their expressions froze on their faces. Sure enough, someone came to report. Your Majesty, the city gate had been breached. The third prince has already led thousands of rebel soldiers into the imperial capital. The imperial capital was backed by a mountain range, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. The only way to break through was from the direction of the city gate. But now, Rongjio actually took such a short time to bring people in. First, they broke through the city gate. Soon, they would break through the palace gate. Everyone in the hall looked at Emperor Jiawen, and the surroundings were silent. Emperor Jiawen was furious. Useless. The number of imperial guards is almost twice that of the rebel soldiers. How did this happen? The person who came to report could only speak with a trembling voice. Your Majesty, they seem to be very familiar with the imperial capital's military arrangements. That's why Officer Zhao Ming and the rest couldn't. The crowd looked at each other. The imperial capital's military arrangements were top secret, and not many people knew about it. How did Rongjio get his hands on it? Digression. Tomorrow at 6:00 p.m., please browse for a better reading experience for my UN. Chapter 446. Also, many aristocratic families in the imperial city seemed to have submitted to the third prince. That person continued stuttering. Emperor Jiawen froze on the spot, as if he was struck by lightning. What do you mean? That person boldly looked up and scanned the surroundings before quickly looking down. Those aristocratic families' heads seemed to have discussed this with the third prince. After the rebel army entered the imperial city, they didn't meet with any obstructions. Actually, Emperor Jiawen understood the meaning of this the moment he heard this. However, he felt that it was too ridiculous. As a result, he subconsciously didn't dare to believe it. There was dead silence in the palace. Emperor Jiawen's vision turned black. How is that possible? I single-handedly supported all these aristocratic families. I definitely won't. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly thought of something and suddenly looked at the crowd standing in the palace. Someone among you has long betrayed me. One had to know that most of the aristocratic families' heads in the imperial city were standing here. If Rongjio brought the soldiers in without any obstructions, it meant that someone had instructed him to do so. What responded to him was even scarier silence. It's you, or all of you. Emperor Jiawen didn't expect the situation to change so drastically. No wonder Rongjio was so presumptuous. It turned out that he was fully prepared. So many people secretly betrayed him, but he didn't know at all. Who exactly is it? Emperor Jiawen suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Your Majesty, calm down first. I guarantee with my life that the Xi family didn't betray you. Xi stepped forward and said solemnly. Previously, when Rongjio escaped from the execution ground, he couldn't find him for a long time. When he heard that Rongjio had successfully reached the city gates, he returned to the palace to ask for forgiveness. He didn't expect things to become like this in such a short time. Your Majesty, the same goes for the Chu family. Chu Shao hurriedly said to express his loyalty. Ever since he was harshly scolded in the imperial study, Chu Shao never came again. Today, he finally had the chance, so he naturally had to suck up to the emperor. Then a few people spoke up one after another. However, the Gu family and the Lu family of the four major families didn't say anything. Emperor Jiawen was so angry that his entire body trembled. Did the remaining people who didn't say anything already submit to that bastard? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from outside the hall. Imperial Father, haven't you already seen the situation clearly? Why bother to get to the bottom of this? It would only make his face even uglier. Emperor Jiawen suddenly looked up and saw a team of soldiers rapidly approaching the palace. Then they separated into two sides. A murderous figure walked out from within. It was Rongjio. Not long ago, he was still dressed in prison clothes, battered and exhausted, waiting for the guillotine to fall. But now he was clad in armor, leading his soldiers in an aggressive manner. Finally, he stood outside the main hall. He looked at Emperor Jiawen fixedly. Imperial Father, how have you been? Fear finally surfaced in Emperor Jiawen's heart. Men, protect the emperor. Chu Xiao immediately led the others and rushed forward. But before she could stabilize herself, she heard Rongjio lightly say, "Don't worry. I do not wish to implicate the innocent. As long as you surrender now, I guarantee that I will not touch your family members." Chu Xiao immediately shouted loudly, "Let's go. This is treason. It was a serious crime. His Majesty is the only emperor. Rongjio, you're only digging your own grave by doing this." "Oh, really?" Rongjio raised the padao in his hands and slowly wiped away the bloodstain on it. "First Elder Chu, you probably don't know that the entire imperial city is under Ai's control, right?" Chu Zhao's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Rongjio and felt uneasy. Could it be that Rongjio will really win this time? At the side, Ci coldly said Rongjio. "Rongjio, you killed the Empress and want to rebel now. You deserve to be killed." As he spoke, his body's force surged, and he planned to take action. Rongjio chuckled. "I do hate the Empress, but the one who killed her is someone else." Ci was dazed. "You're lying." His Majesty said it himself, and he had also investigated in private. The guards outside the Empress's palace that day all pointed to Rongjio killing the Empress. How could someone else do it? "I have already brought the soldiers here. What's there to lie about?" Rongjio looked at Ci sarcastically. "You should ask Father about the truth of the matter." Ci was dazed. Rongjio does make sense. He even started a rebellion, so why wouldn't he admit to killing the Empress? Unless he really didn't do it. Ci stiffened his neck and turned to look at Emperor Jiawen. Emperor Jiawen harshly said, "Elder Yi, where's Elder Yi?" Such a big thing happened in the palace, but Elder Yi still hasn't appeared. At this point, Emperor Jiawen didn't know that Elder Yi, who had been guarding Elder Zong Yi, had also met with some trouble. Seeing that there was no hope of saving Elder Yi, Emperor Jiawen thought of something. Deep Xian Formation. The Deep Xian Formation was country Yao Chen's palace's defense formation, but he just remembered that the Deep Xian Formation wasn't activated when Rongjio and the rest barged in. Rongjio said, "Oh right. Oh that's right. I forgot to tell you that the Deep Xian Formation is also under my control. If you want to take a look, I'll personally send you there. How about that?" Emperor Jiawen felt like he had fallen into an ice hole. Then he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Xiao, who was standing at the side, had a few drops of blood on him. He wanted to reach out to help him up, but when he thought of what Rongjio said previously, he suddenly felt afraid and took a step back. How could the others not understand at this point? They naturally avoided him. Emperor Jiawen's hands trembled as he pointed at Rongjio. "Why you?" Rongjio lifted his chin, and his expression was cold. "It seems like Father's body isn't too good. You should rest properly." As he spoke, he raised his hand. "Someone come and send Father to Qinghe Palace to rest." Emperor Jiawen immediately shouted, "How dare you? Rongjio clearly wants to imprison me." He clenched his teeth. "Rongjio, don't think that I can't do anything to you. I..." Before he could finish his sentence, a huge commotion came from outside. A cold and gloomy aura quickly spread out. Emperor Jiawen suddenly looked up. In that direction, is where Situ Xingqian is being locked up. The most important thing is that this aura, Someone touched the bronze cauldron. He didn't even think about it, and immediately rushed outside. But before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by someone. Emperor Jiawen's face flushed red. Let me go over. Rongjiu, do you know what that is? Let me go over immediately. If not, you'll definitely regret it. The moment he finished his sentence, Ong, a greenish-red pillar of light shot up to the sky. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 447. Dark clouds rumbled and heaven and earth darkened. That light pillar went straight for the sky and into the clouds. From afar, it looked like it connected heaven and earth. On top of it, the green and red lights intertwined, forming a strange pattern that made one fearful. Rongjiu turned around to take a look, and he looked serious. Wei Lin, immediately send someone to check. What exactly is going on? Yes. Everyone in the hall also looked over with different expressions. Taking advantage of this short gap, Emperor Jiawen suddenly turned around and rushed back. I must be quick. But Rongjiu quickly detected this movement and turned around to look coldly. What are you all waiting for? The people at the side immediately reacted and rushed forward to stop Emperor Jiawen again. This time, Emperor Jiawen's hands were tied up, and he couldn't move. Rongjiu! Rongjiu! Emperor Jiawen was furious, and his face flushed red. Rongjiu waved his hands. Aren't you going to send father to rest? A few soldiers immediately walked over and escorted Emperor Jiawen away. Eunuch Min and a few other servants who served him were also taken away. At the start, Emperor Jiawen was still scolding Rongjiu, but when his figure disappeared through the side door, his voice suddenly disappeared, leaving only faint sounds of struggling as if his mouth was stuffed. The crowd looked at one another. At this point, it was clear who had won and who had lost. Emperor Jiawen, who was high and mighty a moment ago, was locked up in the blink of an eye. Even though Rongjiu didn't directly kill him, Emperor Jiawen's future days wouldn't be good. The entire palace was so quiet that it was suffocating. Rongjiu's gaze swept across the crowd and stopped on Siyi for a moment. Siyi's entire body tensed up. Even though the Si family was the head of the 4 major families, it clearly wasn't a wise move to go against the current Rongjiu. Si family head, I'll have to trouble you to accompany father during this period of time. Siya's heart sank. Is Rongjiu planning to put me under house arrest? Third prince. Before Siyi could finish his sentence, Rongjiu nonchalantly interrupted him and slowly said, You're not the only one. Don't worry, as long as you take good care of father, I will naturally take good care of everyone in the Si family. This was a blatant threat. Siya's heart surged with anger, but he suppressed it in the end and said word by word. Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble your highness. Then, he turned around and walked in the direction that Emperor Jiawen left in. Several officers and soldiers followed closely behind. Everyone exchanged glances privately. It seems like Rongjiu still has a grudge against the Empress. Besides, Siyi was the one who sent Rongjiu to the execution ground. The Si family's situation naturally wouldn't be any better. Seeing that Emperor Jiawen and Siyi had already been dealt with, Chu Xiao was filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he definitely wouldn't have stood out. Now Rongjiu will definitely remember this in his heart. As expected, Rongjiu's gaze landed on him. Great Elder Chu. Chu Xiao shuddered as he looked at Rongjiu fearfully. Third Highness. You're very loyal to father. Why, aren't you going together? Chu Xiao's legs turned to jelly, and he immediately said, Your Highness, you're mistaken. Actually, just now. Rongjiu's gaze was filled with unconcealed mockery. Chu Xiao's heart skipped a beat, and he seemed to be choking on something. His face flushed red and white, and he wanted to defend himself again. However, under such a mocking gaze, he seemed to be a joke. Great Elder Chu, please. The soldier at the side had already spoken first. Sensing their terrifying murderous intent, Chu Xiao clenched and loosened his fists. In the end, he could only leave with them. Then, the other people who previously stood on Emperor Jiawen's side were brought away. After a short silence, someone mustered his courage and spoke. Congratulations, Hung Long. Before he could say anything to curry favor, another loud sound came from the sky. Rongjio took a deep breath in, turned around and looked over. Wei Lin had already returned. Rongjio asked, "Where did that light pillar come from?" Wei Lin's expression was very solemn. "Your Highness, it seems to have come from Taiyuan Palace." Rongjio knitted his brows. "Hasn't nobody been living there since a long time ago? Have you found out who caused such a commotion there?" Wei Lin paused before saying, Your Highness, I'm useless. The outside of Taiyuan Palace is covered by a barrier. Outsiders can't get close to it, and they can't see the situation inside. I tried to enter 3 times, but I didn't succeed." Rongjio was slightly shocked. Wei Lin is a stage 5 warrior, and he's very capable. If even he can't break the barrier, bring I there. When the light pillar shot up to the sky, Elder Yi and Elder Zhongyi, who were in a stalemate, also felt the strong ripple in another hidden dungeon in the palace. Upon hearing the loud sound, the 2 of them were stunned. There aren't many people in the entire country, Yao Chun, who can cause such a commotion. Also, it sounds like it's not far from the palace. The 2 of them held their breaths and focused as they felt the sinister ripple. Suddenly, Elder Yi was shocked. The commotion seems to be coming from where Situ Xingchen is locked up. Most importantly, this aura. Elder Yi had a terrifying and absurd conjecture in his heart. Then he turned around and quickly left. Elder Zhongyi was stunned. Yi Jiding actually left just like that? What exactly is so urgent that he actually gave up on guarding me? Thinking of this, Elder Zhongyi quickly broke free from the cage and followed him. The moment Elder Yi came out, he was stunned by the huge light pillar that connected heaven and earth. He froze on the spot and didn't recover his senses for a long time. Indeed, someone still touched the bronze cauldron. Elder Zhongyi, who quickly rushed out, was also shocked when he saw this scene. However, he was more confused. Yi Jiding is considered someone who has seen many big scenes. What exactly is it that can make him reveal such an expression? However, this question didn't linger in his heart for long. To him, the most important thing now was to find Situ Xingchen and bring her away. Even though the bracelet was destroyed, he was very familiar with Situ Xingchen's aura. As long as she was still in the palace, he could still find her quickly. Thinking of this, Elder Zhongyi closed his eyes and searched carefully. After a moment, he opened his eyes, and deep shock flashed across his eyes. Situ Xingchen seems to be at the spot where the light pillar came from. On the other end, Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi also entered the palace amidst the chaos when Rongjio led the soldiers into the palace. Luckily, everyone's attention was on Rongjio and the rest. In addition, the duo was good at hiding their figures, so their journey was smooth. Until they saw the terrifying light pillar. Jian Fengqi knitted his brows. What's that? It's so eerie. Chu Luiyue didn't have any expression on his face. I'm still a step too late. What? Jian Fengqi was about to ask again when a figure suddenly rushed out of the light pillar. Digression, trash computer, ruining my time and slowing me down. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 448. Under the light. That person's figure was a little blurry, but Chu Luiyue still recognized her. That person was Situ Xingchen. When she flew to the middle of the light pillar, she finally stopped. Then the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into her body. A few energy whirlpools rapidly appeared around her. Even the pattern on the pillar of light seemed to distort. Chu Luiyue stared at Situ Xingchen's figure closely. As the energy surged in, her aura kept strengthening. What's going on? Jian Fengqi muttered and nudged Chu Luiyue with his elbow. Hey, do you know what she's doing? You were referring to this when you said you were one step too late. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything, but many thoughts surfaced in his mind. That bronze cauldron must be with Situ Xingchen, and it's obvious that she's already activated it. She used the energy inside. She was just a stage 3 warrior previously, but not long after, she's about to break through to stage 4. I have to think of a way to stop her. Jian Fengqi stared at it a few more times and knitted his brows. This thing is a little strange. Don't you sense a bloody smell? Chu Luiyue coldly said. The bronze cauldron contains the blood of the bronze cauldron. The bronze cauldron contains the power and blood essence of several hundred cultivators. It's not strange for it to smell like this. Jian Fengqi's expression changed. He was a celestial physician and had killed and saved countless people. But when he heard Chu Liyue's words, he still felt disgusted. As long as he used his brain to think, he would know what kind of scene it would be. It turns out that the bronze cauldron is such an evil item. In that case, the energy in this light pillar was actually snatched from those people? But the energy accumulated through such means is mottled and messy, and it might even conflict with each other. Once one absorbs this energy, even though it can raise one's cultivation level in the short term, it will greatly affect one's future cultivation. Who's so brainless to do such a thing? He naturally didn't recognize Situ Xingqian. Chu Liyue pursed her lips tightly. How could Situ Xingqian not know what Jian Fengqi said? But she still chose to do it. Suddenly, Chu Liyue sensed a strange fluctuation coming from the Qingkuan bag. She carefully examined it and discovered that the commotion actually came from a wooden box. That wooden box happened to be the one I got from Situ Xingqian. Chu Liyue looked up again and frowned. The movement of the wooden box seemed to have been caused by the light pillar. Inside the wooden box was a roll of parchment. There was a layer of seal on it, and even now she had not been able to break it. Previously, she had thought of many ways to open it, but none of them succeeded, so she put it aside for the time being. Who would have thought that it was related to the bronze cauldron? In midair, Situ Xingqian was still rapidly absorbing the surrounding energy, and her aura was clearly becoming stronger. Following this change, Chu Liyue clearly felt that the movement in the wooden box was gradually expanding. Jian Fengqi then realized that Chu Liyue's expression was amiss. What's wrong with you? Chu Liyue shook her head. From what Emperor Jiawen said previously, she could guess that the Empress specially prepared the bronze cauldron for Rongjin to help him improve his cultivation level. She vaguely guessed that Emperor Jiawen knew something, but she didn't say it. She originally planned to carefully check the item after finding it, but she was one step too late as Situ Xingqian beat her to it. Once it's opened, the energy in the bronze cauldron will definitely be absorbed and turned into Situ Xingqian's energy. But now, it seems like things are more troublesome than expected. What are you looking at? Hurry up and leave. Suddenly an impatient scolding came from the side. Chu Liyue quickly turned around and saw a group of people walking over. Her figure moved, and she quickly hid in the corner at the side. Upon seeing this, Jian Fengqi also hid. The group of people walked closer and closer. Chu Liyue then clearly saw that the person being scolded in the middle was actually Emperor Jiawen. Behind him were eunuch Min and the others, and they all seemed to have suffered. He was surrounded by soldiers in red armor. They were Rongjiu's men. Emperor Jiawen had already changed out of his dragon robe, and he looked a little disheveled. If one didn't look closely, one wouldn't be able to recognize him. He looked anxious as he kept turning his head to look at the green and red light pillars, as if he wanted to say something. It was a pity that his mouth was sealed, so he could only make muffled sounds. He couldn't hear anything clearly. The soldiers at the side pushed and shoved him, rushing him forward. Emperor Jiawen kept struggling, until the person at the side pulled out a sword, pressed it against his waist and hollered, "We have plenty of ways to make you obedient. Why don't you try?" Emperor Jiawen finally stopped, and despair flashed across his eyes as he stumbled forward with them. Very quickly, these people walked past Chu Liyue and Jian Fengqi, and headed in a certain direction. Chu Liyue's eyes sparkled, and she planned to follow them. Jian Fengqi pulled her back. "Where are you going?" Chu Liyue glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. "If you want to follow me, go ahead. If you don't want to, you can walk on your own." Jian Fengqi was stumped. Wasn't this girl always polite to him before? Why did she suddenly have such an attitude? He was about to retort when he met her clear eyes. He suddenly felt guilty and softly muttered, "Go ahead." "So be it. Why are you so angry? Why is Chu Liyue's temper so bad? My status is clearly much higher than hers, but why do I feel like I'm lower than her?" Just as he was wondering if the problem was with him, Chu Liyue had already left with those people. Jian Fengqi could only follow. Those people brought Emperor Jiawen to Qinghe Hall. Emperor Jiawen was locked in a room alone, and the others were locked at the side. The doors and windows were tightly locked, and there were people guarding every corner. Luckily, there weren't many people. Actually, Rongjie was still wary of Emperor Jiawen, but the entire imperial city was under his control now. After enduring for so many years, he finally succeeded, and he was in a good mood, so he naturally let down his guard. In addition, Situ Xingqian's commotion distracted part of his attention. This made things convenient for Chu Luyue. After observing for a while, she sent Dumpling out. Dumpling was small and fast, so she quickly caused a commotion and attracted the attention of 2 guards. Taking advantage of the time when they left to check, Chu Luyue quickly entered the hall. Ong! Another thunderous sound was heard. Chu Luyue turned around and saw that Situ Xingqian had actually become a Stage 4 warrior. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 449. However, Situ Xingqian didn't stop there. Instead, she started to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force at an even faster speed. It was obvious that the greenish-red pillar of light contributed greatly. Chu Luyue knitted her brows as she looked at the rumbling dark clouds in the sky and the lightning that flashed from time to time. Generally speaking, such a phenomenon would only appear when a rare treasure appeared in the world. For a cultivator to cause such a huge commotion, they had to at least break through to become a Stage 5 warrior. One had to know that when Chu Ning recovered from his old injuries and broke through to become a Stage 5 warrior, it wasn't like this at all. If this continued, Situ Xingqian would most likely continue to break through. The wooden box in the cosmic bag was also vibrating more and more. Chu Luyue almost couldn't ignore it anymore. She even felt that there was something in the wooden box that wanted to rush out. At this point, Emperor Jiawen heard the commotion and suddenly turned his head. Chu Luyue immediately hid behind the study table. At this point, Emperor Jiawen was distracted, and his remaining rationality and attention were all placed on the pillar of light outside. He didn't even notice Chu Luyue. He slowly walked to the window, which was locked from the outside and couldn't be opened. Hence, he couldn't see the situation outside. He could only see the light reflected on the window. How can this be? How can this be? Emperor Jiawen was dazed as he softly muttered, "Ruyue, I've let you down in the end." Chu Luyue was dazed. "Ruyue? Isn't this consort one back then Rongxio's birth mother? What does Emperor Jiawen mean by saying this at this time? Also, it sounds like there's deep regret and self-blame in his voice. Rumor has it that Emperor Jiawen only doted on Consort 1 back then, and the harem of 3,000 people couldn't compare to her. However, not long after Consort 1 gave birth to Rongxiu, she had a huge fight with Emperor Jiawen. She then directly moved out of the palace and went to Tianlu Academy. After staying in the academy for 2 years, she passed away. It's normal that Emperor Jiawen can't forget her. But why did he mention her at this time? At this moment, Emperor Jiawen removed something from his neck. Because he was facing Chu Luyue from his side, Chu Luyue could only see a rough outline, but could not see clearly what it was. "You're still blaming me? Is it because I was wrong that I ended up like this?" Emperor Jiawen muttered softly as he looked at the item in his hands. He seemed to be smiling and crying at the same time. Shortly after, the item in his hands suddenly glowed with a faint light. Like a stream of water, it flowed along Emperor Jiawen's arm and spread to his entire body. Very quickly, Emperor Jiawen's entire body was enveloped in that strange light. Chu Luyue's pupil shrank. This was because Emperor Jiawen's aura was gradually becoming stronger. However, that power was clearly gushing out from his own body. A strange pattern suddenly appeared above his head. Chu Luyue took a quick look and realized that the pattern was exactly the same as the pattern on the green-red light pillar outside. But in comparison, the one above Emperor Jiawen's head looked much more normal, unlike the one outside that was filled with a strange and eerie aura. Kacha! Suddenly, a crack appeared on the pattern. Following the crack, Emperor Jiawen's aura became even stronger. Chu Luyue finally realized something. There's a seal in Emperor Jiawen's body. Now he seems to be planning to break that seal. It's obvious that Emperor Jiawen's abilities aren't as ordinary as they seem on the surface. Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something, and his heart harshly skipped a beat. If the pattern that appeared above Emperor Jiawen's head was a seal, what about the one outside? Hong Long. A snake-like bolt of lightning shuttled through the thick black clouds and finally struck the light pillar. Crackle. Following this ear-piercing sound, a crack appeared in the middle of the strange pattern on the pillar of light. But as the light pillar kept flashing, and the pattern was pulled until it almost changed shape, almost nobody noticed this change. Most people's attention was on Situ Xingqian, who was in the middle of the light pillar. Rongjio stared at her closely. Actually, he had already recognized that person as Situ Xingqian. It seems like she has been locked up in the palace previously, but for some reason, she suddenly started to break through. The aura on the light pillar is the same as the bronze cauldron. Your Highness, what should we do? The crowd behind him exchanged glances. Should we just let it go like this? But it seems like we can't go near to stop it. Rongjio boomed, seal the gates. Be prepared to activate the Deep Xian formation at any time. Everyone was shocked. Your Highness, activating the Deep Xian formation requires a lot of manpower and resources. It seems a little overboard to deal with a stage 4 warrior. One of the patriarchs asked tentatively. Rongjio turned around and sneered. It seems like family head Su is willing to take the lead. That person's expression changed, and he hurriedly shook his head. What a joke. The aura on the light pillar is so dangerous. Even a stage 5 warrior like Wei Lin can't do anything about it, let alone the others. Since no one wants to go, immediately go down and prepare the Deep Xian formation. Rongjio hollered, and that person was shocked. He didn't dare to say anything else and hurriedly left. Very quickly, the people at the side also followed him. Rongjio looked at Situ Xingqian again and suddenly thought of something. Where's Elder Yi now? At this point, Elder Yi was fighting with Elder Zhongyi again. After coming out, he planned to stop Situ Xingqian, but Elder Zhongyi blocked his way. The two of them were equally skilled. Without a burden, Elder Zhongyi's combat ability was much stronger than before. Hence, after a few moves, the two of them were still tied. Seeing that Situ Xingqian had already broken through and was planning to continue, Elder Yi became increasingly anxious. Zhongyi, do you know what your precious niece is doing? Elder Zhongyi sneered. Isn't it very clear what she's doing? If you want to stop this great opportunity, you'll have to get past me first. That light pillar contained immense strength, and Situ Xingqian had already successfully broken through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 4 warrior. Not long later, she might even break through to a stage 5 warrior. Situ Xingqian was very talented as a celestial physician, but her progress as a warrior was mediocre. As long as she grasped this opportunity well, she would definitely be 100 times stronger than before. Elder Yi was enraged. This idiot actually thought that Situ Xingqian was lucky enough to obtain this opportunity. He even hoped that she would continue to break through and become a top warrior. He really can't be saved. Since that's the case, I won't stop her. Just wait here and see if she'll become a top warrior in the end. Digression. There are 2 more updates at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.